Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. We found our way betwixt and between. We found our way here again. Hopefully, you guys are all doing well out there. Man, really weird day I had today. Doing my research, doing all that kind of stuff. First of all, man, it's like the pettiness that kills me the most, you know? Like the denial and all of that I've come to expect, but like I released my newest video and it was an intense one, I'll admit. I said within it though, your walls will melt, right? Like this is a reference to the rising heat and all of this. And someone has like nitpicked in what has got to be the most nitpickiest way. And their complaint literally is like, yes, the crops will burn and there will be famines and heat will go up and all of this and it'll be horrible, but walls won't melt. And I'm like, that's what happened in Lytton. And their response is like, it didn't melt, that burnt down. So like literally amidst like a rant, they heard the word melt and this just derailed them completely. And they felt the need to send me a comment about it. And it's like the most nitpicky of nitpicks. And it just makes me think, like, man, no wonder the right wing can't stand the left wing, man. Like, I really get it. Like, that's annoying. Like, you're not furthering the conversation at all, right? Like, and it would be different if the comment was done with like, ha, walls don't melt, dude, it's gonna burn, right? Like if that's what the comment was, then I'd be like, ah, yeah, right? And then that's like a conversation between two human beings, where it's like, melt, burn, sure, but like, come on, melt. And I'm yeah, okay. But it was like, it's like the most haughtiest, like, using language like this is irresponsible and discredits our movement as a whole. And I'm like, shut up. Like, shut up. It's so fucking embarrassing. It's so fucking embarrassing and annoying, right? And I think it really is just like, it doesn't further the conversation at all. And then this attitude just means that anytime you wade into these sorts of conversations with right-wingers on language issues that are actually important, they're just already, they start the conversation by rolling their eyes. And it's just like, and I try so hard to not be snarky. I try so hard to not be sarcastic. But it's just like, dude, today marks settler colonialism and genocide, but the food tastes good. Is today Thanksgiving? Is that right? I don't really pay attention to these series of holidays. I know Thanksgiving is around here. Is today Thanksgiving? No. Unless it's, is it American Thanksgiving? Time zones. Hold on. Is it American Thanksgiving? American? Yes. Oh no, it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. I mean, where you're at, I guess it's already tomorrow, right? I know you're in, I want to say Finland. One of those Scandinavian countries. But, and then I had another experience. It was absolutely incredible. This was wild, actually. So you know how sometimes you, like, drink something and it goes in the wrong windpipe, right? Like it goes, instead of swallowing and it goes down, it goes into your windpipe and then you, like, cough. Well, I had that, except it was, like, a substantial amount of liquid. There was something went wrong in the processing. You know, I was, like, literally drinking mine and it just went down the wrong thing. And it wasn't like an out-of-body experience, but it was 100%. My body was just like, all right, John's intellectual, like anything from like here up, like the brain unit, is no longer in control of what is happening. We got this. And it really was like my body just like took over and I'm like observing myself as I'm like coughing and like spitting out coffee with no care whatsoever of like where that coffee is going or what's happening. And it was just like, a real reminder to me that we don't actually have as much control as we think we do. Like, people really do view themselves as, like, I'm in control of myself. I am a person. I am an individual, and I have the control of my individualism and all this kind of stuff. No, we don't. Like, no, we don't. We don't really have as much control as we like. And it was a real reminder that, like, when duress happens, like when the fight or flight is activated, your mental capacity really isn't, like, you're not really in control. And there's all kinds of functions that happen inside of your body that you just sort of take for granted, and you don't actually think, yeah, I was choking on coffee. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? No, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. If anyone had have seen it, they would have like been deeply concerned for me. I was like hacking. It was brutal. It was brutal. But I lived. Everything's fine. Like, it's totally fine. But I'll say I had to take a shower afterwards. We'll put it that way. Like, it was not a small affair. But just a reminder that I don't have as much control as I think I do, and if the universe wants to get you, it'll get you. I always look at those kinds of moments. It's just like, yeah, if the universe is just like, yeah, you'll just swallow that coffee, it'll go into your lungs and you'll drown. Oh yeah, I'm totally fine, bud. I'm totally fine. I took a nap after. Everything's perfectly fine. I hope you guys are doing well. Good to see you, Major. Good to see you, Onward. Always good to see you, Mark. It's let's slide into this one. Yeah, what a bad way to go, eh? I think they'd be very confused. It would, like, I'd just be like lying in the apartment. A mug would, like a SpongeBob mug would be beside me. Nobody would know how it went down until they like do an autopsy or something. And I hope they don't even realize it. I hope they just think like, yeah, and he just disappeared into heaven. That's fine. Oh, you got one of those going on, Onward. That's good. Those days really remind you that you're alive, right? You can really feel your joints grind on those nights, on those sorts of days. I hope it's worth it. It really usually is not when it happens to me. I hope it's not because usually when it happens to me, it's because I get caught in like existential dread and horror. That's usually what happens to me. Functioning on 3 hours of sleep, though, like when there are days where you have to do it, right? Where it just kind of works out that way. And then there are some days where it just happens because you're like, I could watch another episode of this. I can feel the jagged edge of death's cold hands reaching through the dark. How poetic. Wow, how poetic, Onward. My goodness. Well, say hello to him for me. All right. Let's, speaking of people reaching through the dark, let's pick this number. What do we got? I'm going straight with a 5. I think 5s have been good to me. I feel like...
Here we go for today's number. It's November 24,
at least twice,
2021. 10 balls.
Here we go.
Each ball has a number.
Good to see you, Nova Scotia. Hey, Harry, how you doing, man?
Numbers 1 through 10.
4? You've never done this? It's easy as it can be, but you already did it. Look at that. Swirl the numbers. Always 7, the divine
number. Pick a number.
Here we go.
Today's number is 3.
Major. Today's your day, bud. Go buy a scratch ticket. Go do the thing. Yeah, I gotta get one of these hats, eh? Look at this hat. I love this hat. And he wears it every single time. You can tell that David Lynch really loves like ritual. Ritual is very important to him. the structure of this, it's exactly the same. He uses exactly the same lines. He doesn't deviate at all. Which means that when he does deviate, when there are the slightest deviations, people really notice it in the commentary. They really, really notice it, like down in here. There's a guy who's like keeping stats of the sequences, for God's sakes, right? With a sum and the average and the median. And so there was one time where like he was picking a lot of sixes over here. And there was one time he like kind of had a little smile and a chuckle while he did it, and people really fucking noticed. It was like really funny. So anyway, I find this thing that he's doing at all, given especially who David Lynch is and what his beliefs are and what he thinks about the world, I find this to be so like, it's so David Lynch. It's so entrancing. Like if it was literally anybody else, I don't think I would care. You know what I mean? Like if it was just some stranger, or if it was just some like kid or whoever. But because it's David Lynch, I'm just like, yeah, it's, for some reason it gives this authority somehow that like Major just got the number. And what that means intrinsically is that the energy that led to David Lynch pulling that number is shared with Major picking that number, and both of them are tapping in to the same kind of magical energy and the magical force. And that's kind of nice. There's something really nice about that, to know that right now, Major, you are living within the energy, the Lynchian energy. And David Lynch does all kinds of awesome stuff all the time. Like he'll be in an interview, and he'll just say something like, "Oh yeah, I asked the universe, and the mystical man said to me that I better go do it." And then somebody will say, "Can you explain what you mean a little bit more?" And he'll just look at them and be like, "No." Like he obviously believes in magic, like to some degree. Like he and I mean, if you watch like Twin Peaks and all of his stuff, you can see that it's the truth. He obviously believes in magic. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I think that he believes that there is like energies that underpin things that can influence us. And but he's never really felt the need to sit down and explain it to anybody, which I really respect. My guess was because Onward slept 3 hours. Here you go, Onward. So the energy that you're feeling right now, Onward, has been tied to David Lynch and the Lynchian energies. So when you're leaning in and feeling the cold hand of death, perhaps that's David Lynch himself reaching out from through the veil. I swear to God, if I were to if I died and the person who greeted me was David Lynch, I'd be like, fuck this universe, man. What the fuck? And David Lynch would be like, yeah, I know. Well, let's go. Louis C.K. In one of his episodes, he had David Lynch play the fellow who was like prepping Louis C.K. to become like the guy to replace David Letterman, right? And so he goes through this whole process, and the whole time David Lynch is just saying like, "Do something funny." And Louis C.K. is like, "Well, it doesn't really work like that, you know. I just don't do it. No, do something funny." And so then Louis C.K. just does the thing, and like it's just David Lynch looks at him and goes, "All right." Oh yeah. Zorican, hey, I sent you a message on Patreon, but I don't know if you got it. So let me know if you actually got the message or not, and I'll resend it to you, okay, bud? You were talking about it yesterday, so good to see you. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the news. Enough faffing about with Mr. Lynch. Scathing national report sheds light on child poverty in Canada. The child poverty rate is higher, 18.5% for children under 6, than all children. It's a huge number. If children in poverty had their own province, that province would have a bigger population than Saskatchewan. A new report from 120 national, provincial, and community organizations, hosted by Family Services Toronto, finds poverty reduction has stalled, and given the impacts of the pandemic, it is likely to increase in the next few years. An incredibly fast rise in inflation and a cost of living, especially housing, already has Canadians panicking about the cost of living, and this report will not assuage those concerns. Food banks are seeing unprecedented level of demand, which puts immediate pressure on the system for those most in need. 32 years ago to the date, on the heels of signing the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the federal government made a promise to end child poverty by the year 2000. A new report card by Campaign 2000 finds, despite that promise, more than 1.31 million children are still living in poverty. Using the latest data available, this report paints a stark picture of income, health, and social inequalities and deepening levels of child and family poverty. Parliament starts its new mandate this week, and the pressure will be on to deliver an inclusive recovery plan from over 120 national, provincial, and community organizations hosted by Family Services Toronto. The reality is, I'm not going to continue reading the whole thing, but like the reality is the Trudeau government is just going to sell us to capitalists, right? Like they're being very open about this, you know? Like they're saying like, yes, we're going to try to find solutions to these things, and like the throne speech that just happened, Justin Trudeau talked about climate change and talked about like the standard boilerplate stuff, honestly. But the reality is that everything is being done within the confines of negotiating with capital, and capital will always sacrifice workers and the poor in pursuit of this worship of money. They will always do it. Yeah, stop child poverty and unhousedness. Stop it now. Yeah. Good to see you, Vince. Good to see you, Ruth. I was watching QP today and was immediately mad knowing these elected officials are so rich and pompous that they don't gaff about the poor. They are so narcissistic. End poverty now. Watching Question Period makes me so angry, whether it's federally, provincially. The elites are 100% of control in our labor and resources, and it's so wrong. Yeah. Trudeau is in such a we were elected to do our job today, and it was so infuriating. These elites are so out of touch. And yet we, the 99%, are never in charge. I mean, this is one of the key philosophies of Marxist-Leninism, right? On Maoism even, is the dictatorship of the proletariat. That it's the workers themselves who seize control of the ruling system. And this is how we eliminate the class system and turn the society into a single class, and that class is workers, right? That in the end, if the workers have control of everything, then everything and has like a dictatorship level of control where there isn't going to be a small cabal of elite wealthy landowners who seize control of the levers of power, then you're going to build a better society for yourself. Seems to be working out in China. I don't understand why they care about child poverty and don't understand they will always be poor if their parents are poor and have no help. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like the hyper focus on child poverty, right? And I am more or less of the opinion that the reason why there's such a hyper focus on child poverty is that they will, like the child care benefit, which I agree with, of course I do. It's a form of a basic income, right? And it worked, until housing prices lost their mind and the cost of living skyrocketed. But it still would work if you raised the child care benefit. But it was working, giving a lot of credence to people who argue in favor of a basic income. And but the hyper focus on child poverty, in my view, is another form of hostage taking, right? That, we're going to give money to help your children so that you can put them in daycare so that you can come to work, right? It's in my view the reason why there's the hyper focus on giving money for children is that it's just another form of hostage taking. Like it gives credence. Oh yes, we the capitalists are listening. No, we're not going to give money directly to parents so that parents can actually take care of themselves and thereby take care of their children, because that would disincentivize them to come and work in our shitty jobs for, $11 an hour or whatever. And like, why not simply say, like, hey, let's create a floor that no one can fall below this floor of poverty, right? Why not say that? Because the end goal of the capitalist death cult is to force people to do work that they don't want to do or that they know they shouldn't be doing, right? In exchange for the lowest possible wage. Like, if capitalists could have you work for nothing, they would, right? That's straight up what's going on. And yeah, I'm a little zonked out today, but I've kind of been numb to all the bad news. I know, this last week was especially bad. Yeah, I was glad to see the Ahmaud Arbery case resolved. For those who don't know, that was a case where a white man killed a black man. And yeah, it is a really low bar, right? It's such a low bar that, like, we are sort of expecting that that a white man will be able to walk away from that kind of thing, right? We are expecting it. That in a very straightforward murder trial, we still are kind of like, okay, like, what kind of hijinks is going to happen here? And when it goes through and the guy's actually guilty, we're like, okay, good. Like, there's some rationale to the system. But it's like the lowest possible bar that you can find, right? You literally can't go lower, right? Like, and the fact that it is in our heads, that it's in the back of our heads, that we're sitting here being like, oh man, maybe that guy will get off because that's how it seems to work. Yeah. The birth rate has dropped somewhat. Maybe they're trying to get it up again. If they could, they would sell you nothing for everything you had. Yeah. I mean, and the birth rate point, like, yeah, oh, you've made a shitty, like, you've made a society that's shitty, that exhausts the hell out of us, while simultaneously completely ignoring or pandering to a climate change catastrophe. Like, we literally are in a moment where there are large groups of people who are saying, like, I'm not bringing a kid into this world. It seems immoral to do so, right? There's a large movement building in America and in Canada that you can see, you can witness it, right? Go to the anti-work subreddit. Anytime this issue of, like, low birth rates or anything comes up, the comments are just loaded with people being like, I'm not going to fucking bring a kid into this world. It seems cruel. It seems absolutely barbarous to do that, right? We're not setting them up for success. Like, and it seems that that's very much the case, right? Like, what they are facing and what they are going to be facing moving forward, you're literally just birthing people to conscript them into a war effort. Like, yikes. Like, should we tolerate that? Is that really, do we think we're really doing them a favor? Hey Miranda, how you doing? I'm in child welfare. 99% of the families I serve live in poverty. Yeah, foster parents make $2,500 to $4,000 a month, and biological families can receive a maximum benefit of $6,500 a year. Yeah, and like, we do come to a point where we're just like, hey, the money's not real. Like, the money's not real. Like, why does it need to be this way? Like, why are we arranging things like this? Why, like, the entire point of the system should be to provide access and to be inclusionary. That should be the entire point of any system that we erect, right? Like, if the system isn't being inclusionary to the maximum amount and isn't making things easy for us, then we should eliminate it, replace it, and get rid of it. And it seems like the financial system that we've erected is explicitly exclusionary, that it's doing everything it can to exclude the maximum amount of people from being able to get access to goods and services. Like, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I mean, of course it doesn't work. It's not like neoliberal capitalism isn't an economic system. I say this all the time. And I can't wait to say this to some Fraser Institute guys. Right? I can't wait to say this to some Fraser Institute guys. Like, you guys are not espousing an economic system. It doesn't actually work. It's a religious ideology. It's very obviously a religious ideology. Like, and I just know it's going to happen. And then they're going to scoff and roll around, oh, you don't understand it. And I'll just be like, yeah, I do. Of course I do. Right? Like, you guys just don't want to admit that your religious ideology isn't being taken seriously anymore because it's not an economic system and it never was. Right? It's just a project of extraction. It's the language they've used to try and extract the maximum amount of wealth out from the workers. Like, that's what the stock market is. That's what they're measuring. What do you think the stock market line is, right? It's not measuring the power of the economy. It's not measuring how effective the economy is being, how many goods are being distributed. It's not measuring the increase in well-being, the increase in caloric intakes in the society. It's not measuring any of that. It's exclusively measuring the amount of wealth that can be extracted from the populace. That's what it's measuring. Like, and it's not working. I mean, it's working for what they want it to work, which is that the extraction process is successful, right? But that's how you collapse an economy. Like, if you extract all the wealth out of a society, well, its economy collapses. Big surprise, right? But we shouldn't be surprised that, like, colonial settlers, you know, who are like, capitalism's the greatest because it generates wealth that we literally steal from, like, third world countries, then turn around and do it to themselves, right? We shouldn't be very surprised by that at all. The U.S. population grew from 2020 to July 2021 by just 0.35%. And some experts worry that soon it may decline for the first time in history. I mean, that to me is like the hallmark of the failure of this neoliberal capitalist period, right? Like, we have created inhospitable conditions for even birth, right? Like, millennials are having less sex than Gen X and boomers, right? Like, straight up, we are having less sex, period, to begin with. And, like, the people who are having kids, like, they're not having, like, the 2.5 kids, they're having 1, right? Maybe 2. So there is a decline coming. And it's predictable. It's completely predictable. Like, it's right in front of us. You don't need to be a super genius to figure this out. Like, oh, if you make the place shitty, so no one's having a good time, right? Instead of one person working and sustaining a household and a family and a car and going on vacation and all of this, you got 2 people working and they're not even doing that, right? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what do you think is going to happen? But the reality is that these capitalists don't actually think about these things. Like, they have built an ideology that permits them not to think about these things, right? That's what they're saying when they say the free market will decide. They're literally washing their hands of any consideration or planning. They just literally beseech an invisible hand, which is like a god essentially, that the free market will align things in a way that is excellent and good. That the core incoherence of the neoliberal ideology is that if we let chaos reign, it will usher in an era of order. Like, chaos is order. That's really, like, if you wanted to put it in like the George Orwell 1984 kind of statement, like, that is what they're saying. Chaos is order. Like, big yikes. Like, big yikes coming out from these guys. And so, yeah, it's going to have enormous detrimental impacts on just the basic functions of how we live. Hey, Alex, how you doing, bud? I love you too. Alex, seeing as you're here, I'll talk about that Alex asked me a question. He's one of my Patreons, so good. Thank you so much for your contribution. And if you would like to be a Patreon, please donate down below. He wanted me to talk a little bit about socialism and religion. I have a religious background, as you guys know, and I talk about religion all the time on this. I have a different perspective of religion, I think, than like we're used to in this society. But the reality is, like, socialism is tied in to religious thought and to religious thinking, and it always has been, right? Like, think about a figure like Tommy Douglas, right? Tommy Douglas was a pastor. He was a preacher, right? I forget from which tradition. I think it was Anglican, right? And the precepts of socialism, the idea that everybody should be taken care of, right? That the base needs of the populace should be looked after, that even the people themselves should be the ones who are the most looked after and most able to interact with their ruling system, right? And and so it makes sense that people who are most tied in to credible religious organizations would be the ones who would be most incentivized to push forward ideas that actually help people. Ideas like a universal healthcare system, which was Tommy Douglas's like banner. Right? That's what he moved forward with. That's what he was trying to implement in the society, and it worked. Right? And if it wasn't for his upbringing in the in the Anglican tradition, and this idea, like basic Christian precepts, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Give your money to the poor. Like really, really basic shit. Like it's not like big high tech. You don't need to like really, really like create an argument. Like it's really baked in. And you can say the same thing of the communists, right? That the communists' big complaint about religion was its institutionalization. That it ceased to be about how to improve the lives of people, and it actually became about just showmanship, right? And I've talked about this before, right? Like modern religious movements are largely fraudulent. They're either completely fraudulent or they're completely cowardly, right? And that's a great example, Alex. Martin Luther King Jr. was both a minister and a socialist. Exactly, right? And he has a foundation of religious truth that he's working from. He's rooted in a spiritual tradition that informs his desire to improve the lives of the people around him and to find simple, elegant solutions to do so. And the scam that's being perpetrated on the populace these days, you have the evangelicals who are outright scammers. Like they're con artists. The prosperity gospel alone is heretical. Like it's incoherent with the text. It doesn't align. It doesn't make sense. There's literally passages in the Bible. The book of Job completely dismantles and destroys the prosperity gospel to the ground. This idea that if you work hard and you are a good person, God will reward you with riches. And if you are a poor person, it is because you have done something bad in the sight of God. Like, that's the prosperity gospel. That's what's taught by these evangelicals. And it's completely fraudulent. It's completely heretical. If God wants to fuck you up, he will, or it will, if you prefer. And that's like explicitly stated in the text. Like God wants to gank you, he's going to gank you. Like, it doesn't matter what you do about it. It was actually Buddhism that brought me to socialism. Yeah, absolutely. Like the Buddhist tradition also, like it contains a lot of like the beginning of the Buddhist story is the realization of the Buddha, right? That the world has disease and sickness and all of these horrible things in it. And that he has a realization that, oh, well, we should cease pursuing these material hoarding and try to alleviate the suffering of the people. And instead of focusing on our material kind of luxuries and creature comforts, we should be focusing on creating just a happy society where people, like, if you can't just sit down under a tree and enjoy the life that you have, then the system that you are living in is likely illegitimate. And we don't actually, we don't live in a society that permits us to do that, right? Every single day we've got to, get up, have a shit, have a shower, race out the door, commute, go work a pointless job that we hate or barely tolerate, come home, eat, right? Watch an hour of TV and fucking go to sleep to wake up and do it all again, right? And if the system that we've created does not permit somebody to just sit under a tree and contemplate or bask in, the quantum energy that they are, then the system can get fucked, as far as I'm concerned. Then the system can get fucked. And to the people who listen to that kind of thing, it's like, oh, that's like you just want to be lazy. You just want take your insults and go somewhere else, right? You literally don't know what you're talking about. If you're calling meditation and contemplation and actually spending time with yourself in silence laziness, first of all, A, I don't think you've ever done it, right? And B, I don't think you actually have the cojones to do it. I don't think you have the capability to do it. I think you're too weak. There's a reason why you need to denigrate it and insult it. It's because you're too scared to go do it. Because the hardest thing for a person to do, no question, the hardest thing for a person to do is to deal with themselves. Right? And that's what a person is doing when they're sitting under a tree, meditating or contemplating their place in the universe or any of that kind of thing. They are dealing with themselves. And that's how you do it. I'm loving that the Santa Claus thing has taken over. Hey, DM, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. The beard is epic, dude. The beard is epic. Planning on being Santa Claus at the Eaton Center this year? No, I don't think so. Not quite yet. I do think the beard's going to go a nice white, though. Maybe I'll get the Karl Marx thing, right? Where this all goes white and then this stays black, right? We'll see. Tweets like this with parties accepting the system are just bad. ONDP, good morning. In 190 days, we can elect a government that will introduce $10 a day childcare. The world is on fire. Yeah, I am so unimpressed with these NDP. I'm very unimpressed with them. They are really lowballing it, man. The liberals are talking a better game. And given what we know about how the society waffles back and forth between conservatives and liberals, I'm expecting the NDP to lose this election. That's my expectation of them. I just don't think they have it in them to run a successful campaign. I don't think they understand how to. They're obviously not offering stuff, right? They're straight up. They're just not offering stuff. And that's what's the most confusing, right? Hey, don't you think that you should offer stuff? When I am premier, I will, saying stuff like 2 sick days, $10 a day childcare. It's dude, we're amidst a climate catastrophe. Child poverty is spiking, right? rent prices are going through the roof. Housing prices are going through the roof. Like, you guys sound dumb. Like, you sound dumb. Right? And more I'm starting to worry that the reason why you sound dumb is because you are dumb. Right? That, like, you can't even stand up and say, hey, you know those 700 climate change related programs that Doug Ford canceled? We're going to bring them back. There you go. Like, there's something that would be like, oh yeah, okay, now we're talking, right? But we're not a very serious people, you know? Like, that's really what it is. We're not a very serious people. We certainly don't like talking about politics in serious ways. It's become like a WWE affair. And then the people who do get serious are like nitpicky bitches about it. Like, they're really like doing what they can to like whinge the conversation, right? Instead of trying to further the conversation, actually find a way to move forward, they just want to get wound up on their stupid petty bullshit. And so, like, you know, there does come a point where I start to say, like, we deserve what's coming. Like, we deserve it. We keep voting for it. Like, we keep electing just total wimps and rubes, right? In BC, where they got serious enough that they actually voted in an NDP government, well, the NDP totally betrayed everybody. Like, it was a complete betrayal what the NDP did. Like, literally, instead of like doing and enacting anything that they said they were going to do, they just capitulated to the capitalist system. Basically said, yeah, the capitalists run this place. That's fine. Right? Took their bribes and said, fuck you, to the province. Essentially, is what happened. So, like, why should we actually believe that this electoral system is working? It's completely irresponsive. It's completely unresponsive to us. It's not responding to what we are saying. It pretends like it will, but then just doesn't do it. Right? And if that's the case, then we don't need it. It's an illegitimate system. It's been corrupted, right? It's designed to be corrupted. And, you know, we start getting into like some very like we should really start reading up on theories of revolution, right? We should really start reading up on theories of revolution, because like there is a foundation, right? There's a philosophical foundation for justifying revolution, right? The creation of the United States of America through the Revolutionary Wars, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, right? The Wars of Independence, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution. They all begin with the statement that the system of governance that is in place, that has been entrenched, has become illegitimate and unresponsive to the needs of the people. Like, it is time to start talking about this in terms of the failure of electoral politics and revolution. Like, we have to actually be serious about that, because the question is beginning to become, is this system even capable of responding? Is it even capable of responding to the demands of the populace? And more the answer to that question is no. It's obviously not capable of responding to the demands of its populace. It's so and like to the degree that it's going to actually be a major detriment to even its own beneficiaries, right? The people that you would think, like the billionaires and like the owners of the means of production and all of this. Well, like, climate change is going to be a major detriment to those people. A major detriment. And a major detriment to their own children. So the system has failed. It's not working. It can't work. And the evidence we have of it failing and not working is that even when we elect parties, such as the NDP, who promise to move things to the left and promise to actually do stuff, they don't. And I'm beginning to be concerned that it's not because they don't want to, it's because the system doesn't permit it. And so we genuinely have to begin talking about this outside of the confines of electoral politics, because in Canada and the United States, because electoral politics can't get the job done and isn't getting the job done. Like, we've got some very, very serious issues facing us, and it's especially bad in America. Like, for God's sakes, like, for as much as I complain about, like, we had 700 climate change plans and the Conservatives came in and eliminated it. Well, at least we had somebody who was trying to make a plan, right, here in Canada. In the United States, it's just nothing. It's just literally nothing, right? Just a straight up, like, get fucked, right? Like, it's time to begin organizing a revolution. And I don't mean like a revolution and we'll get the votes and we'll go into the halls of power and we'll do all that kind of stuff, because the system itself doesn't permit it. Right? But even if we did elect a communist, the system is such that they would not be able to enact the changes. Because that's what the system is designed to do. It's designed to maintain the power of capital, period. It's not designed to respond to the problems of the society. It's not designed to protect people from climate change. It's not designed to alleviate poverty. It's not designed to ensure everybody has housing. It's not designed to create an equitable, egalitarian society. It's designed exclusively and explicitly to protect capital. We have to revolt. Like, we have to. And like, it's not a hyperbolic statement to say. The system has failed, it will continue to fail. Well, I shouldn't say that it's failed. It's doing exactly what it's intended to do. And we have to stop pretending like it's intended to do anything else. It was designed to operate this way, and it is. So we need a revolution. We need a revolution. We need to surround the halls of power. We have to. We don't have an alternative. There's no other choice. We have to surround the halls of power. We have to redraw our charter, right? We have to start arresting people, for sure. Like, the people in the fossil fuel industry who knew about climate change and who understood their participation in it and then funded climate change denialism instead of fessing up to it and then creating a plan in the 80s, they should be arrested. For sure. Like, for sure. These people are treasonous. Yeah, Jagmeet does not have the spine to stand up Trudeau and ruling Liberals. If it ends up being like another election, I'll be very impressed. Yeah, block the halls of power. Simple as that. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's like herding cats, right? Getting everybody in one place at one time. Cannot trust the cons, libs, or NDP, or even the Greens. All simps for the capitalist system. Yeah. I wonder sometimes if leftists should physically band together and move to the Okanagan, live out their values, or maybe buy a neighborhood in Detroit. Socialist nationalism. I mean, that's what communes are, right? And Canada has a long history of communes. You can look into it, right? I know people who have thought seriously about this, right? And I know I grew up around communes, right? I lived in Portage Prairie, Manitoba. There was 2 communes right nearby, right? And you can set up a commune. Like, Canada does have that history, and those laws are still on the books. They've never been repealed. You can set up a commune. Block Doug Ford's house, block halls of common, block the halls of power, block the railways, block the 401, the 402, all of it, yeah, all of it. And the people they arrest and incarcerate for that, I will consider them the heroes, right? They will be heroes. And I mean, for God's sakes, come to my protest December 15th, 2 p.m., Yonge and Dundas Square, right? We cannot continue participating in this. We just can't. The Constitution of Canada needs to be rewritten to include housing and basic income as a basic human right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, there is a line in the Charter that talks about how it's, that the security of Canadians is sacrosanct. And people have attempted to argue that, like, hey, part of security is having housing and food, right? But hasn't really landed. It does need to be explicitly stated. Like, it does need to be explicitly stated. And my big fear about this period of time is that when the politicians attempt to sell us back to the capitalist death cult, we'll all just bow our heads and go along with it. Now, the Great Resignation is showing that that's not necessarily the case. But to me, that's just the beginning of it. Like, I'm very, very worried that the capitalists will be like, oh, okay, we'll just pay higher wages. And everybody will be like, good, we got higher wages. And they'll just go back to work. You know? And, like, nothing will have changed. It's just like a little futzing of the numbers. We'll still be heading towards a climate change catastrophe. We'll still be just powering forward towards our own destruction and inevitable economic collapse. But the populace will be placated by the stupidest, smallest little piecemeal reformists. Oh, we'll raise the minimum wage to $15. Oh, good. Now I'll go back and work at Wendy's. That's what I'm very worried about. Problem, now everyone in a far-right country knows where the opposition is in Detroit. Yeah, exactly. Nah, that's true. But, I mean, there does come a point where you do need to form lines, right? Like, you do need to draw lines in the sand, and you do need to say, like, here we are, right? Like, here we are. Oh, people are not ready for that, Alex. That idea, we should just abolish money. Like, Trotsky actually wrote on this, and I actually think he's right. That people they won't be able to handle that, right? It won't make sense to them. It's not going to be able to compute. They're so entrenched in the idea of money as a thing that actually matters, that to remove it is akin to killing their god, right? Like, it's just going to be like this. The upheaval that would follow such an action would be revolutionary in and of itself. That the people you deprive of their god would demand its reinstatement, and so rather than that, you create a society where you stop worshiping money. Right? So you stop worshiping money and you start using money for what it is, which is an organizational tool. That's what money is. It's an organizational tool. And you begin using it for that. And instead of depriving people of money, right? Instead of withholding it and excluding people from money, you make money ubiquitous. So it's easy to get. Everybody has access to it. And you make it so accessible and so easy to have access to that everyone just comes to a point where they assume that they will have the money to get housing, to get food, to get basic goods, and then even a little more, right? And so and once everybody gets into this position where it's just sort of assumed that they have access to the money they need in order to get base goods, people will start to forget about it. Right? And very steadily over time, like, there will be a small group of financiers that work for the state who are, like, with their abacuses and with their digital kind of stuff and all that, making sure that everything is together and all of that. But for the base population, they simply won't care. Or if they do care, it'll be like a passing kind of a notion, right? It just won't be part of what they think about. And so in this way, money will begin to wither away from the society, where eventually people will just come to assume that, yeah, food and shelter, like, our rules, our society, we take care of it. How? I mean, I get there's this old thing called money that kind of is used as I don't know that much about it. It's not that important, right? And then eventually it literally will wither away so that even the state itself is kind of like, yeah, we don't really keep track of it. Why? Like, everyone has food, everyone has shelter, everyone has access to basic goods, right? No one's like going on a crazed like hoarding spree, because why would they? But the shift from this to that is centuries long. Like, that's a long walk. That's a long walk. Good talking to you, Alex. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thanks for popping in, bud. And it's this withering away, right? It's this withering away, which was central to the writings of Lenin and Trotsky. They really believed that instead of trying to force things, that eventually power structures would simply wither away through time. That the next generation of people would see them as less valuable, certainly not worship institutions like money the way that we do, and that they would just fade out, right? So we need to focus on the revolutionary project, and that's truly what we're doing here. And again, it's got to be restated. We're too spread out. Like, that's the reality of what's happening right now. We're too spread out. There's a group blocking off the 401, walking to Napanee from Cornwall to support Wet Sweatin' today. No kidding. Hello from Treblinje Republic, Bosnia. Good to see you, bud. Here, let's take a quick look. I love maps. I love all that kind of stuff. And we got a person in. Like I say, we're all spread out. We're all spread out. All right, we got a fellow from Bosnia in the chat. It's up to each and every one of us to become the leaders of the movement, right? Like, you are the one that needs to make the flyer. You are the one that needs to connect with whatever movement exists in your society, right? In your community, right? You're the one that has to do it. And I know it's a big ask because we're all exhausted, but it's what must be done at this stage in the game. If we were all here in Toronto, or if we were all in one spot, it would be a different story, but we're not. Like, we're not. We're all over the place. But we are going to have to be organizing and creating like a world revolution. And that world revolution is occurring, right? Like, what we are witnessing throughout South America is a revolution, like, without a doubt. And the fact that the United States is not capable of responding to it is showing the diminishment of their power. Good to see you, Grinning. Glad you popped in. I want to look this up. Wet'suwet'en 401 blockade. Yeah, here we go. OPP warn of delays as demonstrations slow traffic on Highway 401 from Cornwall to Napanee. So going back here. Napanee. Where's Cornwall? Where's Cornwall? Where's Cornwall? Where's Cornwall? Cornwall. So a fairly decent stretch. I am not surprised that I did not hear about this, right? I feel like this kind of news it's what's called technical reporting, right? That they'll report on it, but it gets buried on page 57, like Article B, right? You got to go through like 3 different pages and like a paywall. OPP say they are tracking a rolling blockade of protesters traveling down Highway 401 in eastern Ontario. Police are warning the protests might be slow. Police say they are working with the protesters who they believe are acting in solidarity with Wet'suwet'en people who oppose the Natural Pipeline project. Similar solidarity blockades, including a lengthy blockage of CN Rail in Ontario, took place last year. New protests and blockades. Of course, they're not actually telling you what organization this is, right? They're not actually telling you what the name of the protest organization is. Is it Extinction Rebellion? Who is responsible for organizing this protest? Was that supposed to show me something? All right. Well, and we know that the Indigenous Affairs Minister was saying that he was concerned that these things were going to spread around, which is good. Absolutely good. Like, you guys know me. I am of the opinion that we need to be stopping. We need to be stopping full scale. Like, no bullshit. No bullshit. We have to stop polluting. We have to, right? And we've got to start pleading. Like, be done with this negotiating. Be done with this negotiating, right? We have to stop polluting, right? The very fact that we're still, like, making LOL dolls and dumb shit like this, right? The very fact that we're still doing that kind of dumb bullshit. Like, we are going to have to start begging. It is going to come down to that, especially in regards to the United States military. Like, we're not going to just... Like, the United States military is not just going to stop doing what it's doing, right? They're going to keep walking around with their dicks wagging out. And, like, for clarity's sake, like, the reason why I bring up the United States military is they're the number one polluter on the planet. And it's not even close, right? It's not even close. All of those jets and all of the tanks and all of the battle cruisers and all that shit, it's all run on oil. It's all run on oil. It's all fossil fuels, right? And they're just dumping all that pollution into the ocean. Like, I wonder if, like, a Cthulhu-style monster is going to come out of the ocean at the end of all this. What do you think? Is there a Cthulhu monster for real? Yeah, but come on. There's got to be, like, a... But there's got to be like a... There's got to be like a creature that's kind of like it. But it's my right to cover my wall with Funko Pops, John. No, it isn't. Like, it actually isn't. Like, that's the best part about that comment. It's like, nope. It actually is not your right to do that. Like, we have all kinds of restrictions on this sort of stuff. Right? We have all kinds of restrictions on this sort of stuff. This manic, ridiculous idea that, like, I'm free to do anything I want. It's like, no, you're not. Like, no, you're not. And having a conversation about freedom without including other people's freedom means that you're not actually talking about freedom. You're talking about selfishness. Right? That if all you care about is freedom for yourself without considering freedom for someone else, you're not talking about freedom. You're talking about selfishness. It's very straightforward. And, like, all of these guys, especially, like, you see it in, like, the anti-maskers, right? Like, they are not caring about the base concept of freedom at all. They're caring about their own selfishness. And, like, and it's selfishness in the most petty, whinging way ever. I recommend Michael Parenti, the JFK assassinating the gangster nation of the state. Yeah, Michael Parenti's a baller, dude. He is. My great lament about Michael Parenti is that he's not able to participate right now. His health has declined so badly that he can't participate. But you can take a look at his stuff on YouTube, and he's an incredible speaker. He's an incredible speaker. He's so well researched. Really goes up against the power of the state. He's right up there with Noam Chomsky. He's right up there with Chris Hedges. Like he's a very, very important intellectual figure that nobody knows about. And if it wasn't for YouTube, if it wasn't for the internet, I think nobody would ever know about Michael Parenti. That it literally is like people with like VHS tape recordings who are like digitizing them and then getting them up onto YouTube. So you're getting speeches that he did in like the 70s and the 80s and maybe the early 90s. And they're brilliant. They're brilliant every single time. Michael Parenti, if you're really sitting there one day and you're like, I'd like to listen to somebody say something and do a thing, Parenti's your guy. Parenti's your guy. Write down the name, right? Michael Parenti, and any of his speeches are good. Any of them are good. He's always got really good things to say. Ha Slado's been released from prison yet? CGL had the audacity to ask the Wet'suwet'en protesters need to prove their indigenousness, or be banned from the territory, sovereign unceded land. I actually have that article here. Let's see if I actually... Yeah, pipeline company wants Wet'suwet'en land defenders to prove they're indigenous. Coastal GasLink likely trying to weaken indigenous claims. Like, shut up. Like, that's some fucking racist bullshit. Straight up. Straight up. That's just some racist bullshit. Like, to provide documentation to prove she's Wet'suwet'en. Like, that's not too different than asking Obama to provide his birth certificate, right? Like, it's that kind of racism. CC Energy told Vice World News in an email, under no circumstances would CGL ask people to prove they're indigenous. But the company then confirmed its lawyers asked relevant contenders, a person found guilty of contempt, to confirm in the courts that they are Wet'suwet'en. This was to ensure access to allow the relevant contenders to brag that they're indigenous. Shut up. Like, shut up. It's so fucking embarrassing. Like these fucking racist assholes who really like they just want to like I almost guarantee that these guys are like they just want to destroy these savages. That's what it is. Yeah. Exactly, dude. Right libertarians don't hate the state, they just want to be the state. Yeah, as you can see in their advocacy for authoritarian things such as children being your property. Yeah, the libertarian movement in the United States it's like the inverse of an actual libertarian movement. It's exactly what capitalism does, right? It co-ops things. It co-ops phrases, it co-ops slogan, it co-ops their movements and claims it for their own and then distorts them. Right, like they did to the Green Movement, right? Like they for sure did to the Free Love Movement. Like capitalism co-ops it. In the 90s, there was all this talk about like the revolution, and the revolution will not be televised, and all this kind of stuff. And what did they do? They packaged it and sold it to us, right? And they distorted it completely. And they've done the exact same thing with libertarianism. And now the idea that we should maximize a person's personal freedom, which is like a core tenet of libertarianism, has led people into like, we should own slaves again, right? That it's my right as a free citizen to own a slave. And again, it falls back on this. If your principles are only for you and you're not considering them for other people, or from the perspective of another person, then you're not actually interested in a governing philosophy or a freedom-based philosophy or any of that. You're just interested in justifying your shittiness. Like that's all you're doing. Like if you create a philosophy of thought that only applies to you and it doesn't actually benefit other people, then it's not really a philosophy of thought. It's just a way for you to justify your own psychopathic nature. oh yeah, like it's completely fine for me to own slaves and they should be happy. Like think about how bad their life was before. Like, all that kind of shit. Yeah, the Democrats are practically libertarians for all practical purposes now. I mean, I got a great I got a great little meme here that really touches on this. Is it this one? No, it's a great... Well, a person of good intelligence and sensitivity cannot exist in the society very long without having some anger about the inequality. And it's not just a bleeding heart, knee-jerk liberal kind of a thing. It's just a normal human reaction to a nonsensical set of values where we have cinnamon-flavored dental floss and there are people sleeping in the streets. George Carlin, man, what a baller. Always a baller. And where is this quote? It's always when I want something that I can't actually find it. Isn't that always the way? Isn't that always the way? You know? Oh, speaking of Michael Parenti.
Well, sisters and brothers, I've decided that there's white trash in this country, but don't look among the rural poor or Appalachia to find them. The real white trash is in the corporate boardrooms, the governor's mansion, the courthouses, the national media. If you work for or ally yourselves with the high-placed vipers and hypocrites and thieves and polluters and repressors and assassins, you are trash. I am sick of these so-called leaders who are leading us to the slaughter. I'm sick of their blow-dry hairdos, their sleek, beefy, money-fed smiles, their pinstripe suits, and their tight-ass struts down the corridors of power. I'm sick of the sight of them, and I hate them with all the passion of my humanity, and don't anybody tell me to feel otherwise.
Michael Parenti. Like, total fucking baller. Like, total gangster. I love it. I love this guy. I was just flipping... Oh, yeah, here's a couple of great articles. Right? I'm going to take a moment, take a little bit of a break. RCMP violently raided Coyote Camp on unceded Gittimeten territory. This is November 19th.
We're surrounded by tactical officers with guns. They cut off the internet.
They're outside the window.
Oh, they're outside the window. This is a private residence and you are trespassing. You need to leave now.
For civil contempt of court.
You are trespassing against Wet'suwet'en law.
Come out peacefully.
Do you have a search warrant or an arrest warrant?
We will be seeking those if you're not going to cooperate.
Well, you better have one.
I know you asked for a warrant to enter. Our authority to enter will come under that injunction.
They're walking to the door. They're breaking it down.
Breaking down the door.
Get out here.
We're breaking down the door. Okay, show me hands. Show me hands.
Get that fucking gun off me! Get your fucking gun off me! Lower your gun! Get your fucking gun off me! This is sovereign Wet'suwet'en land! Get your gun
The RCMP have breached the door. They are acting under the authority of the injunction.
Attack dogs are there.
There are attack dogs here.
Standing there, right
Militarized
beside the door.
police. They used axes found in camp to break down the door.
And a chainsaw.
And a chainsaw that they found in camp.
Come here,
to
Molly,
break
you're under
down.
arrest.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch
not
her.
Touch me.
Get your hands off of her!
You're under arrest.
Get
Hands
your
right over
hands
here.
off of her! This
You're
is
under
sovereign
arrest.
Wet'suwet'en territory!
Can I get someone to grab her?
Stand up for me. You're under arrest. Stand up. Get that out of my face and back up. You're under arrest.
For the record, I'm a member of the media. You've been notified that I'm here. I'm observing.
You're under arrest right now, so step out.
Okay.
I'm coming with you. I'm coming with you.
Camera down.
You're under arrest.
You don't want to break it. You're under arrest. Okay, you're under arrest. Stand up for me.
I mean, we're looking at cowardice, right? Like, what of any of this leads you to believe that we are on the side of righteousness as Canadians? Like, what was it when they used a chainsaw to chainsaw down the door so that they could arrest people in a shack? Like, what a pathetic people we've become. What my favorite moment of this clip, by the way, is literally as they are chainsawing down the door. This guy right here. This guy's pointing like an automatic weapon at these people, right? Like, this is terrorism. There's no other way to describe this. This is terrorism. Yeah, this is what reconciliation looks like. Exactly, Harry. And we know it gets even worse. BCRCMP, they told us it deployed snipers and assault teams against unarmed indigenous land defenders because it was more practical. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever why we need snipers to deal with this situation. If you are deploying sniper teams, like, snipers exist to snipe people. That's what they do. They're not for crowd control. They're not to arrest people. They are so, from a safe distance, you can just snipe people, right? Assassinating them, murdering them, so they can't retaliate. It is absolutely a form of overt terrorism to deploy snipers against people whose lands you are invading. What other language can we use? I'm genuinely asking. Like, if the word terrorism, if you don't like that, well, what word would you like to use to describe what we're doing here? Now, how much more trauma can people take anymore? There's got to be a breaking point. Yeah, you would think, Harry. You would think. I'm beginning to suspect that because there's so much, like, and this is very Machiavellian what I'm about to say here, but I think it's actually true, that during periods of stress, the populace will default to the ruling party, right? That the more and more I look at the outcome from the last election, the more and more I see that it was actually a goddamn miracle that the Liberals didn't get their majority. That the fact that the Liberals didn't get their majority was itself an act of rebellion by the populace. Because historically, and in a Machiavellian sense, when populaces are in periods of mass duress, they will defer to the ruling party. And the duress doesn't need to be that impressive, right? We've seen it over and over again in history, in modern history, where, like, Margaret Thatcher, she's worried she's not going to win the next election, and so she, like, invades the Balkan Islands. And that invasion is enough to kick the populace into we've got to support the ruling party during this period of duress, even though it's literally like the invasion of some fucking shitty islands. And so now, like, we're amidst a pandemic, we're invading First Nations land, there's a climate change catastrophe, all of these things. But I think more and more the populace is beginning to kind of smell the shit that's in front of them, right? More and more they're beginning to see that the crisis is actually the ruling party. That, like, yes, there's a pandemic, yes, there's a climate change thing, yes, there's this, but who's standing in the way of the resolution of these things? Oh, it's the ruling party. And that the ruling party is actually in cahoots with the people who are responsible for perpetuating these problems. Like, it's starting to happen. Yeah, Waco 2.0. Yeah, what a ridiculous situation Waco was. The thing about Waco that always kills me, and like there's things to discuss in there, right? Like, and you can discuss the figure of David, of the leader, right? You can discuss him and all that kind of stuff and the illegitimacy and all that. But he said it best, right? He was like, every single day, I go for a jog around the compound. Right? It's like a 10-kilometer jog. If these guys wanted to pick me up, they could. It would have been so easy for them to just come along and pick me up. Right? If I'm the one they want, and if I'm the one that's like the criminal as far as they're concerned, just come and pick me up. Why did they have to surround this compound? Why did it go down this way? You know? And you know, there just comes a point where you got to start thinking, like, we just kind of like it. You know? Like, these RCMP officers, why are they doing it? Because they like it. That's what they enjoy. That's what they want to do. Like, think about how cool this guy thinks he is, right? Yeah, walking around in the snow, trudging around the snow with an automatic rifle so I can protect myself from old people and women, you know? Knowing that I've got, like, a sniper behind me, right? We're probably communicating through, like, radios. So if anything goes sideways, I don't know how it could. Like, you've got a fucking assault rifle. Timothy McVeigh. Why is that name? Timothy Oh, yeah, the Oklahoma City bombing. Yeah. I have heard there's a conspiracy surrounding Timothy McVeigh that I don't know nearly enough about. So I don't think I'm going to comment on this. I just realized the RCMP are under the control of the Minister of Public Safety, Marco Mendicino, the MP from Eglinton Lawrence. Public safety, yeah, okay, sure. Well, all that means is that they don't consider First Nations people part of the public, right? RCMP need to be abolished. Almost 19K people as RCMP. They can all find better jobs, literally anything else at this point. The RCMP commissioner struggled to understand the accusations of systemic racism as targeted towards the institution. Oh boy. Oh boy. I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and those who are denying the concept of systemic racism, right? And what's weird, because we all know where it's coming from. It's all coming from Peterson, right? But what's weird is that the same guys who are denying systemic racism will, like, full-throatedly talk about hierarchies, right? So they understand that there's the existence of hierarchies, that there's this pecking order and all of this kind of stuff. So there's a hierarchy, but they refuse to understand that a hierarchy can be maintained through time as the individuals within it are replaced because they die, and that the laws that are passed in the institution are maintained even as the individuals are replaced, and that the laws that these individuals can pass can be racist. And we have extremely obvious examples of this. The Indian Act, for example. And instead of understanding this, even though they understand the concept of hierarchies, they insist that everything is just individuals individualizing their individualism. And it's like, but it's so easily falsifiable. Like, it doesn't matter what individuals are part of the government structure. The Indian Act is still a law that exists. And if those individuals wanted to change it, they could by getting together and voting it out. But they're not going to do that unless you actually talk about the impacts that it's having negatively. And what's the phrase that's being used to describe what this is called? Systemic racism. This is kind of vague, but it feels like something is going to happen or made to happen soon to galvanize the herd and redirect their energy. Oh yeah, we're constantly doing that. COVID had that effect, right? COVID had that effect. That all of the energy and all of the like protests that were happening in regards to climate change and all of that kind of stuff was building up, right? And then COVID had a real cooling effect on it, which has historical precedent, right? And I'm not sitting here being like, the governments are manipulating us in order to... I'm just saying that it happened. Like, I'm not saying that, like, I don't like this plandemic, although I rather like the turn of phrase. I rather like the plandemic. It's very conspiratorial. I really, really like it, actually. But I don't think, like, these guys don't plan anything. Right? Their plan literally is give the rich people money and they'll make all the decisions. And then the rich people turn around and then they pay somebody to make the decisions. And then those people pay somebody else to make the decisions. And then at the end of the day, it's like, you know, a handful of workers in a place being like, well, we've been told by policy to do this, so I guess. It's just like the invisible hand of the free market. Chaos brings order, right? The idea that these guys are like planning the pandemic gives them way more credit than they're due. Like way more credit than they're due. They're not planning anything, dude. They're not planning a fucking pandemic. If it was like a real pandemic, they would have never. If it was a plandemic, they would have never passed the CERB. Like they never would have done that. The passing of the CERB was completely an act of panicked desperation. Like, the only reason they did that was because they were worried for themselves. That's literally the only reason. And now they feel safe, and they're like, oh, okay, we got these vaccines, and like, we've created like a social distancing sort of thing, and so I feel safe now. Justin Trudeau, I feel safe. And so they're getting rid of it. Like, that seems like a bad plan. Like, if it's a plandemic, it seems like a bad plan. But, like, yeah, they are going to absolutely do something to, or at least seize on the opportunity, right? That's more accurate, I think. Like, I as I've gotten older and as I've gone on, like, it's less about them doing something in order to create an event, to galvanize something. It's more about getting the pieces in place and preparing for the inevitability of some event happening, and then using that event to galvanize and redirect, right? Because like these events are going to happen, right? You're going to have a flood, you're going to have an earthquake, you're going to have a famine, you're going to have something. Something is going to happen, right? That's just called being alive in the world, right? Like that's just life. And so the goal of the ruling class is to ensure that when such a thing happens, they are able to capitulate or to capitalize rather on the event to make it the most profitable that it can possibly be. There's a great book written by Naomi Klein called Disaster Capitalism. She really goes through this process and how it's like a stated thing. It's like a stated goal that they actually have. Which is, you know, never let a good disaster go to waste. I think that's a Thatcherism again. And but it's really appealing to humans to be like, Bush did 9/11 and like JFK was assassinated by the CIA and like all of these sorts of things. Which, I mean, JFK was assassinated by the CIA for sure, and Bush probably had something to do with 9/11. Probably not like Bush did 9/11, but there's probably something there. But like, I like what Chomsky said about these sorts of things, which is that like, it's just a good way to waste energy in the populace. is to have them dwell on the conspiracy instead of pay attention to things that are verifiable and true, that you can like literally look at. Like, I was a big 9/11 truther until Noam Chomsky said, like, well, so what? So what if Bush did 9/11? Like, so what? So what? Like, so let's say we prove it, right? Like, so what? Bush is guilty of like significant high level, like Hague level, get hung in the war crime tribunal, war crimes that are verifiable, that we can see and we prove. Like, so what? And that was a real moment for me when I was like, that is a really good point, Chomsky. Like, that is a really good point. Like, and then he goes on to kind of say, like, yeah, if I was part of the ruling class, like if I was in the State Department, I would constantly have people be spending all their time and effort winding on conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11 and JFK and all this kind of stuff. I would constantly try to be ensnaring them and trapping them into these ideas of like, yeah, talk about 9/11 more, talk about the CIA involvement in the JFK assassination, like do all that kind of stuff. Certainly do not talk about our very visible, extremely provable, like openly done illegal invasions into foreign territories that could actually get us hung. Like, if the populace were to rise up and go get George Bush and send him to The Hague, he would be executed as a war criminal. Like, based on the evidence we have. We don't need to prove anything. It's right fucking there. The Hague has essentially said as much. Like, when you look at people as less than human beings, you can exploit them however you please. Absolutely. That's Harper's old stock Canadians comment. People themselves don't like to be in this state, like how we tried to ignore our problems and elected Reagan. I mean, Reagan is like... Reagan was for sure... Like, guys, the CIA took America over, right? Like, this is what happened. Like, Reagan was absolute... Like, who did they have? They had Nixon, right? And Nixon was a liberal who actually wasn't that interested in working with the CIA. And Nixon was kind of crazy. Well, not kind of crazy. He was a fucking psychopath. He dropped a whole bunch of fucking bombs on brown people, right? But he also was he was a liberal. He passed a lot of liberal legislation. And so the CIA ran Truman. But Truman wasn't hard-nosed enough for them. He wasn't compliant enough. And so they started to back Reagan. Right? And, like, we know this. Like, Reagan was a tool of the CIA, and people like Eisenhower were warning about this takeover of the presidency and of the halls of power from the military-industrial complex and the CIA. And then, for God's sakes, like, they eventually just got to the point, like, and they used Reagan because he was, like, a popular figure, an actor, right? It was as, like, conspiratorial as you can think of it. And then eventually they were just like, oh, yeah, we don't need to do that. We don't need to, like, run some, like, famous actor type and hide behind the shield of, like, a smile and a wink and any of that kind of stuff. Let's just back former head of the CIA, George Bush. Like, it unfolded exactly. It unfolded exactly as I say it's going to unfold. Like, eventually they'll just rule openly, right? They're not going to even pretend like they're interested in, like, the American dream or any of that kind of shit. They're just going to rule openly. They're not even going to pretend like the Congress or the Senate or the presidency even matters, right? They're literally just going to say, like, yeah, we don't care. Oh, you passed that law? We don't care. That's what's going to happen. And you can see that unfold in how the CIA infiltrates the American political system. That at first they're like, well, let's put up, like, Wimpy Carter, right? Like, he's kind of like a humble looking sort of a guy, right? Like, kind of an everyman sort of a figure. And then they move over and get like Hollywood star Ronald Reagan, right? And he's like, we can really use him as like this shield to obfuscate what's going on. And then literally the next guy is just like CIA fucking the guy that ran the CIA, George Bush. So they're just straight up like, yeah, whatever. No one cares. Like no one's going to do anything about this. Right? Like and then and then they go between like a Clinton like who Clinton, like Clinton's ties to the CIA are not as tight, obviously, but like he wasn't interested. He didn't care, right? Like Clinton just wanted to get blown by interns. That's literally Clinton's whole arc, right? Like he just wanted to get blown by interns. And that's it. That's all he wanted, and he did. And he went along with the military-industrial complex. He went along with the corporate state. He went along with all of that shit, right? And he got what he wanted. And then they put in like W, right? So they're literally like, oh, the former head of the CIA, George Bush's son. Like, come on. What are you guys saying? Yeah. Wage theft is fun and profitable, yeah. Wage theft is the number one form of theft. In case you didn't know. Right? Here's 341 million in robberies, 933 million in wage theft. And as I say over and over again, companies are incentivized to steal wages. Because even if you mount a legal battle against a company in order to get the wages that they stole from you, the worst punishment that the company will receive is that they will have to pay the wages that they stole. That's the worst thing that can happen to them. So literally just pay the bill, right? No jail time, no extended fines, no further punishment. Just literally a court will tell you to pay the bill. That's it. That's all that can happen. Compare that to like burglary, right? You don't just give the money back, do you? Right? You don't just give the money back. Nope, there's also jail time. There's some kind of a punishment that is associated with burglary. And so in this way, corporations and companies are fully incentivized. They have every reason to try and steal wages. Because the worst thing that can happen is that they just pay the wages, which they were supposed to in the first place. No, if you wanted to get rid of wage theft, or if you wanted to decline it, like you would create prison sentences. That's what you would do. You would, or you would create some kind of extra fine, like literally pass a piece of legislation that's like, yep, for every $1 you steal, you'll have to pay $1 extra in fines. So like you steal $100, well, you pay the $100 and then you get a fine of $100, and just keep doing that. Right? And eventually it'll just be the bean counters who are like, look, stop stealing wages. Like, it's costing you a lot of money. I mean, we need more left-wing leaders. That is a thing to prey on, but like, we know what happens to left-wing leaders. Like, we know what happens to left-wing leaders, right? They get assassinated. Like, that's what happened to Malcolm X. That's what happened to Martin Luther King. Like, even the Kennedys, right? Like, the Kennedys got fucking destroyed by the military-industrial complex, right? Like, JFK wanted to end the Cold War, right? Like, JFK wanted the Cold War to come to an end, and he wanted to move forward peacefully with Russia. That's what he wanted. There's a reason they assassinate this guy and his brothers, right? Like, don't fucking tell me that there wasn't like a concentrated campaign to kill these guys. Like, obviously there was. And like, so why can't we have leftist leaders? Well, if the leftist leaders start to actually be effective and start to actually galvanize support and start to actually push stuff, they'll just kill them. Right? As they have done constantly. in American history. And then should a leftist movement in America actually begin to foment and actually begin to gain steam, well, you watch. There's going to be a big McCarthy, right? People will get fired. People won't be able to get jobs. The cancel culture will come in. And suddenly if you're, were you or were you not part of the Communist Party, right? Like that kind of shit. Like it's coming. Like it really. And like, that's what's going to happen if like an actual leftist movement starts to occur in America. They're going to do everything they can. They're going to assassinate people. And I mean, what's going on in the black population today where like they're arresting so many, like if you're a black person in America, you know one of your friends or one of your family members is in jail or has been in jail, right? Like this is how you destroy popular movements. You incarcerate people. Right? Like, and they've outright stated it. Like the war on drugs was an attempt to destroy the Black Panther movement. Like it was politically motivated. It was done for political reasons, and they've said so. Like they've admitted it, and and it's showing right in how many people are in the American prison system. They've got like 25% of the prison population with only like 3% of the world's population. Like, what do you think is happening here? Right? They're trying to prevent a political movement. And they're doing a really good job of it. So, like, where are these leftist leaders going to come from? Right? They're not going to come from the communities that are being destroyed by by constant invasion. Right? That's not what's going to happen. They're in jail. And even if one does begin to rise in prominence, they'll just shoot them. Like, they've already killed presidents. Like they've killed like the leaders of major movements. Like what makes you think they're gonna stop that? They're not gonna like have a reflective moment where they go like, maybe this is a bad idea. No, they're just gonna keep doing it. Right? They're just gonna keep doing it. And like, they will allow leftist voices to exist in the culture. Like you've got like Noam Chomsky, right? Chris Hedges, all this, but that's because they're ineffective, right? Like Noam Chomsky isn't the leader of a mass movement, right? He's not surrounding the halls of power. Like he's not the head of a movement that's actually galvanized protesting or anything like that. That's not what he's doing. He's just a voice in the wilderness, right? If like a leftist movement and that is actually a major reason why the Occupy movement insisted that it needed to be leaderless, right? A major reason why the Occupy movement was like, no leaders, don't like, we're just going to do this like in this kind of anarchist sort of way, is because they knew that the leaders would be assassinated. They knew that, right? How did they know that? Because that's the history of America, baby. Like that's the history of America. And they didn't want that power to be diffused. And like, why do you think, like, as unfortunate as it is, like, why do you think Bernie Sanders is playing ball? Right? Like, why do you think Bernie Sanders isn't like, let's get the revolution and I'm going to start a third party and we're going to start a big mass movement and we're going to get, because they're going to fucking shoot him. And probably his family. Like, you'd play ball too. Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks has a great bit on this. Bill Hicks is one of the great American comedians throughout the late 70s and early 80s, who dies of cancer because they got him with the cancer gun, and that's complete speculation. But I like to say that when political figures suddenly die of cancer, like the way Jack Layton did, I get a bit like, yeah, interesting how this timing worked. Anyway, but Bill Hicks said, like, he was just like, yeah. I bet you when a president is elected, they take him into a room, right? They sit him down. They start playing a film in front of him. And it's the Kennedy assassination, but from a perspective filmed from a place you've never seen before. Right? It's just a completely new piece of footage that no one's ever seen. And I would show them that piece of footage with the Kennedy assassination, turn off the film, look at the president and say, any questions? That's what's happening in America. And so if a leftist movement arises in America, it's going to face assassinations. It's going to face mass incarcerations, right? Like, and these people are ruthless. Like, they will go after their children. Like, they will. Like, don't fool yourself. Like, the people who are organizing this will be kidnapped and tortured. Like, that's going to happen. And likely is happening. Like, we know the Chicago story. Like, there's a reason why America is so far to the right. It's because it wants to be. It's because it's, since the 60s, it's been actively, and earlier even, it's been actively purging leftists from its ranks. Like, the evidence is right in front of your face on this. That, like, if it wanted to allow actual leftists in the conversation, it would. But capital needs to defend itself. Yeah, Ellen and Michelle Obama's BFF, George Bush. Yeah, exactly. Just disgraceful. Oh, but he's anti-Trump, John. Yeah. Just watch. Like, Trump will be rehabilitated. Just like the rest of them. I really hope that the left wins in Honduras next week and Chile next month. It's looking like they will. People like Hillary and Reagan did a lot of damage in Central and South America. Yeah, what's going on in South America is pretty exciting, honestly. Like, it's really showing how weak the American empire has become. Like, it's not able to stop any of this anymore. Like, short of like a full-scale invasion and an actual war. Like, but if America starts acting that way in South America, they're going to isolate themselves from Europe. Right? Europe is on that tipping point, man. Like, they're looking at America right now and they're being like, ha ha ha, yeah, Trump, yeah, ha ha ha, right? And like, Biden's like, America's back, but Europe's like, yeah, for how long is that gonna last? And all Biden has to do is, or all the Democrats or all America itself has to do, is start acting like a total fucking psycho and like invading South American lands and doing all this kind of stuff, especially as they're democratically elected. And Europe's going to start being like, hey, like, how long until that starts happening to us? Really? And they're going to tip towards China. Yeah, Chapo said that the presidency has become as consequential as how people follow the royals in the UK. Yeah, I think there's truth to that. Like, the presidency does actually have an awful lot of power, but the president is going to do what he's told. Like, that's all. He's just going to do what he's told. Bush Sr. to Jr., imagine Ivanka as president. Yeah, Ivanka Candace Owens. Yeah, 2024. Absolutely, dude. That's actually a winning ticket if you ask me. It's gonna be Trump Jr. though. Junior's the one that everybody's angling on. And Junior's the one that's doing all the work. Like, he's the one who's doing the speeches. He's the one who's going around. He's the one building his base and building his cred, right? And he is. And he's... I knew that he was actually very, very serious once I saw that he actually had a vocal coach. Like, the guy has a vocal training coach, right? Where, like, and you can go online and you can find him training with this vocal training coach and how she is working with him to try and improve his public speaking skills. And his public speaking skills have improved dramatically. So he's like really, really trying. Like, he's really, really trying. And so it's I'd be very, very surprised if we didn't see a Trump Jr. Run at some point. Not in this next election, obviously. It's Daddy's turn first. During Breonna Taylor protests, a few who took the lead died in suspicious ways. Of course they did. Latin American leftist leaders often die in mysterious and virulent bowel cancer. Yeah, they get them with the cancer gun, right? Like, even like 5 years ago, I would say things like, yeah, they got him with the cancer gun. And people would be like, ho, ho, what a weird, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? Of course they've got a gun that can give people cancer. Like, what are you fucking talking about? That would be easy to do. I actually think it would be easier to do that than it would be to create some of the technology they have right now. Like, it's just a gun that shoots radiation. Like, yeah, you can fucking give people fucking cancer with a gun. For sure you can. And, like, you know, Hugo Chavez dies of a heart attack. You're like, okay, yeah, sure he did. Like, sure he did. It was suicide. His car just happened to be full of bullet holes. We don't know why. American Politics is the best soap opera ever. Yeah, sponsored by America's corporations, and the cast is voted in by you, the populace. Yeah, exactly, Zorican, man. Like, that's precisely it. You know, so it maximizes its engagement. But, like, everyone's going to capitulate to corporate power. Yeah, they're already discussing 2024. Yeah. I hope we can discuss the 2028 election. Well, the reason why the corporate state is discussing 2024 is because they can't discuss anything else, right? They can't spend their time actually discussing the real problems that people are actually facing, because then they'd actually have to start having an honest conversation about, well, what the fuck is going on, right? And they're not going to do that. That's not their role. So they got to spend all their time speculating on what might happen 2 years from now, 3 years from now, even before the midterms are over. The midterms will be very telling, right? I suspect that the Republicans will take the House back. And as wild and nutty as these guys have become, like, it's like watching Daffy Duck and Yosemite Sam go at each other, right? You recognize that both of them are kind of shitheads. But boy, is it ever fun. And when Yosemite Sam pulls out those guns and starts like shooting and going like, yeehaw, boom, 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 you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. As years progress, these conspiracy theories are reality. Epstein, Weinstein, and Gates were all conspiracy theories. And I guess they were not. Well, the phrase conspiracy theory itself was created by the CIA as a way to attempt to discredit people who created conspiracy theories, right? Who speculated on the idea that there may be a conspiracy. So the CIA creates the phrase, it's a conspiracy theory, right? They're just a conspiracy nut, right? In order to try to get to discredit them. And it worked for a long time. You could just literally say, it's a conspiracy theory. And people would just forget about it. They'd just be like, oh. And then, like, some very serious shit would get manifest. And, like, some very serious conspiracies would be revealed. But instead of the populace being like, oh, wow, I guess sometimes these conspiracy theories are actually true. Maybe we should have more credibility with it. No, it's just a conspiracy theory. The problem is, these days, the conspiracy theories are just fucking dumb. Like, they're just dumb. They have no credibility whatsoever, right? They're so stupid. And to the point where I think that they're probably created and generated by the CIA themselves as a way to continue destroying the credibility of actual conspiracies, right? Like, the vaccine has, like, nanobots, like Bill Gates nanobots. That one was destroyed simply when somebody was like, you're carrying around a tracking device. People were like, oh yeah, that's right. But, like, conspiracy theories used to have, like, some meat and potatoes on them, you know? They were well within the realm of, like, rationality. Like, Bush did 9/11. Like, it's an extremely believable thing to say that the Bush administration was like a part of the administration of that project, right? It's completely believable. There's lots and lots of moments that make you kind of go like, about it. And then on top of that, they have every reason for it to want to have happened, right? It completely allowed them to push forward with their agenda, right? Like in a classic sort of like follow the money sort of sense, it makes total sense that the Bush administration was involved in 9/11. Like that's a great conspiracy like theory. That's a great conspiracy theory. The moon landing was faked. That's a real good one. I really like that one. It's there's a lot of meat and potatoes on that one. And again, like the United States government has every reason to want to fake the moon landing, right? And I think they faked the footage. Like I think they actually got to the moon and they actually walked on the moon for sure. I just think they faked the footage. That if they had to put like in the lower bottom right hand corner like reenactment, everybody would have been like, oh, it's a reenactment. That's kind of nice. Isn't that nice? They did like a film version of it so we could all see that. That's nice. That's how I think people would have received it. But like instead of that, they were like, yeah, goddammit, we're getting to the moon. We're going to show people we got to the moon. Let's have, what's his name? Oh, come on. The guy that did The Shining. Who did The Shining? Why am I forgetting this name? That's so annoying. Director of The Shining. Stanley Kubrick. Let's get Stanley Kubrick to shoot it. Biden confirmed he'd run in 2024. That's why they're talking about it. But yeah, he'd run again. Highly doubt that. Midterms will return House and Senate back to the Republicans. Maybe not the Senate, but definitely the House. Or is it the other way around? America, House, and Senate seat breakdown. One of them is like straight up 50-50 right now. Oh yeah, like look at this. Like the Senate is exactly like right on the line. And then and that's only if the two independents go the Democrats' way. And then the Democrat and the Republican, yeah, it'll probably go back to Republican. It's so easy, right? It's so easy. And like both the Democrats and the Republicans are aware of this, right? They know this is how it goes. Like, why? Because they're allies. They're fucking allies. They work together. I find it odd that a Republican hates what the party is doing but still votes for them. I mean, Ruth, it's just like, who do you vote for? Like you know, you don't have another out. And this is what's happened with the American electoral system. Like, it's so calcified. It's completely not working for the benefit of the populace at all. And people who are, why do you think they keep saying like, oh, the best thing you can do is go vote? They all say that, right? Because as long as you're funneling your energy into this dead system that doesn't work, right? You're not funneling your energy into the streets, right? You're not funneling your energy into a revolutionary project to overthrow the system, which is what must be done now. Like, there is no other option. This idea that we're just going to go vote, like that's not real. Flat Earth is just a conspiracy engineered by the US and Australian governments to sell more maps. I like that, dude. I like that. Yeah, like Flat Earth theory pisses me off so much. It's like so falsifiable. You know, like the best conspiracies are the ones that are difficult to falsify, right? Like Bush did 9/11 is it's pretty difficult to falsify that, right? And it's largely speculative, but there is evidence here, there, and everywhere, and they kind of put together a thing. And the thing that really throws a lot of shade on the 9/11 conspiracy theory is that they came out with their like official like what happened on 9/11 document, but the people who were involved in that project, a lot of them resigned, right? Like when the document came out and it got pushed through, a lot of the people involved in the project resigned in protest. Already like a bad sign. They were like, this is inaccurate. We cannot support it. We resign. And then Noam Chomsky himself did a big breakdown of the 9/11 report and was like, no, this is false. Like there's lots of holes in this story. And not from like a conspiratorial speculative way, but just like, that's not true. This didn't happen. That's false. And like, if that's the document that they're releasing, it throws a lot of shade. It throws a lot of suspicion on the event, right? Whereas the flat earth theory is literally like, dude, we've been to space, we've taken a picture of it. You know? This is what I'm talking about. Like, conspiracy theories used to have some cojones. They used to have some, like, gravitas. They used to have, like, some force with, like, outcomes that would actually, like, be meaningful, right? And have like a world altering perspective or view of like how things are going. The flat earth theory is annoying because even if the earth was flat, so what? That's my thing about it. Like, oh, well, so the earth is flat. So what? Like, it doesn't matter at all. Like, at all. Like, you're still gonna wake up and go to fucking work and go home. Like, it's not gonna change. Like, if suddenly somebody showed me irrefutable evidence that was unfalsifiable, that you couldn't argue anymore, the earth is flat, my response would be, well, how about that? And that's it. That's it. That's their win. Like, their win is that a guy like me would just be like, oh, yeah, okay, interesting. And that's it. So it's stupid. Like, it's stupid. Like, give me some aliens, man. Let's talk about that. Yeah, when they conspiracy theories, they distract us from Occam's razor, yeah. Yeah, Kubrick, thank you, Harry. I think Biden could win, and it won't matter. Nothing is getting done. This deadlock is the best option for the 80-year-old millionaire who controlled the Democratic Party. Yeah. I really wish I could find... There's this great quote where someone is... here it is. So let me get this straight. Since Biden took office, there has been more kids in cages, more money for the Pentagon, more money for police, more tax breaks for the rich, more COVID deaths, and less outrage. Is that right? Like... Oh, but he got through the $500 billion infrastructure bill. The $500 billion infrastructure bill. The Democrats did it. They got the infrastructure bill through, and that makes it good. They're the best. The Democrats are trying to help us for sure. And the thing that's the most annoying, right, about the like pro-Democrat crowd is that they refuse to acknowledge their sins, right? Like, it would be one thing if they were sitting here being like, boo the fascists and the Nazis and the Republicans and all that, which I'm like, yeah, fuck all that, right? And then if they turned around and they said, and we know that, like, Clinton was responsible for destroying welfare in this country, right? Plunging a lot of these Republicans into the despair and the poverty that they're experiencing. It's why the Republicans refuse to vote Democrat. It's why they would never vote for Hillary Clinton. Absolutely. And the, oh yeah, Biden, like, of course they're not going to vote for Biden. Biden is responsible for the crime bill, right? Like, like, there's so many reasons why a Republican would never vote Democrat, and the Democrats just do not want to talk about it or acknowledge that those sins are real, right? Progressives and leftists will have to decide. It's harder to reform the D's or the R's or start a third party and stay irrelevant. No, all of that is dumb. Like, we're well beyond that now. Like, we're into revolution, period. Like, this is what we're doing now. If you're doing anything other than surrounding the halls of power, you're not serious. Like, period. All you're doing is diffusing your energy into the graveyard of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. That's what they're for. They're to take big social movements and diffuse them. That's what they do. That's the reason why that structure exists. That's the reason why it's useful to the ruling class. is that social movements go there to die. And that's what it's structurally supposed to do. Since the beginning, since the outset. That's what it's supposed to do. And it's been very effective at that. And and you can't reform it. You can't change it. For God's sakes, they couldn't get health care passed amidst a pandemic. Like, the system is a failure. I mean, it's a failure from a human perspective, but from a structural perspective, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And so you're not supposed to start a third party, right? You're not supposed to reform these parties. You're supposed to get millions of people to surround the White House and surround the Congress and the Senate, right? And literally foment a revolution and take it over. That's what you're supposed to do. Doing anything else at this point is stupid. Like, and not meaningful, and not going to work, right? It's simply not going to work. Like, forget about any ideological kind of thing about righteousness and truth and any of this kind of stuff. In a very practical, straightforward way, it's simply not going to work. What is going to work? Surround the halls of power. That's what's going to work, right? Declare the governing body, the governing system illegitimate. Redraw your constitution. And begin acting as though the previous constitution is illegitimate. Seek international recognition, which you'll get. Like, there's a long history of this. And that's the path we should be pursuing. Right? Like, this system is dead. It's a dead, calcified system. We should stop operating as if we can keep lurching the dead body along. Like, we're trying to pretend like we can, like, Weekends at Bernie's this. Like, no. We have to draw up something new. We have, and the only way that we're going to achieve that is by surrounding the halls of power and starting to do it. Like, when the Americans fomented the War of Independence and the Revolutionary Wars, they weren't like, we'll take over the prevailing British halls of structures and we'll reform them from the inside out. No, they drew up a new constitution. They said, fuck you, British. They flipped them the bird. They ignored their documents and their laws. They created something new and they started working from that. And we have to do the same thing. And anything else, like any other idea, is just a way to kill the only thing that's actually going to work, which is to surround the halls of power and drop a new constitution. (2028) Following the Chelsea Clinton presidency, USA balkanization had begun. Ukrainian Azov units were being imported to police DC. Prophetic. We'll see. I don't think a Clinton can ever get elected again. I sincerely believe that that's the truth. Like, if they try to put Chelsea Clinton in front of us, she can't. She's unelectable. She can't be elected. Like, the Clinton name has been poisoned. Hillary really proved that. And it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if Chelsea was named like a Joseph. It was like Joseph Clinton, and he was like a handsome, suave, debonair kind of guy. No, it's not going to happen. Not after what happened to Hillary. And honestly, like, as we move farther and farther away from the Clintons, like, yeah, like they were not good. Like, the Clintons were not good people. They did some real shitty things. Like, Republicans are right to be angry at the Democrats. Like, they are. This is why I don't like to just jump on the Republicans and shit on them. Like the Let's Go Brandon stuff. Like, that's some, like, low-hanging fruit. And when I see people shitting on Republicans for this Let's Go Brandon stuff, I'm just like, that's just teamerism. Like, that's just some base tribal shit. You're just shitting on them because you want to shit on them. Right? Like, let them say Let's Go Brandon, man. Like, it's I don't know, it's kind of fun. Loosen up. You know? Loosen up. That's my big thing about the left, man. Loosen up. Like, loosen up. Have some fun with it. Make jokes. Like, the left is always about how, like, we need to create art and, like, create new methods of communication, all this kind of stuff. And then, so the Republicans come out with, like, a little meme that is, like, a new expression of something. And what do the leftists do? Oh, just say fuck Joe Biden. Grow a backbone. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. It pisses me off. Like, it pisses me off. It doesn't, like, piss me off. I'm not about it. But, like, let them have it. Like, why do you got to be such a bitch about it? Like, let them have it. Well, why don't they just say fuck Joe Biden? Because they don't want to. Because it's fun. Because it's fun to do this. Why shouldn't they do this? And honestly, the fact that it's making you get all like murmur about it only encourages them. Because fuck you. Because you're supporting people like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton who literally impoverished their children. Straight up. Like, literally did that. Black and white. That absolutely happened. So, like, I don't know. Have some fun with it. And let them have fun with it, too. And also, just for clarity's sake, fuck Joe Biden. The Democratic brand is broken. The infrastructure bill isn't fixing it. Yeah, dude. No, and honestly, like, it's so clear, right? Like, it's like a 7 trillion, note sorry 5 trillion, note sorry 4, note sorry 3, no sorry 2, no sorry 1, no sorry 5 billion. And the only way they were able to even get the $500 billion bill passed is because people were beginning to, like, literally surround Joe Manchin and physically hound him and harass him. Like, that's what it took to get this 7 trillion, $500 billion bill through. And we all know what's going to happen with all of that money. Like, don't fucking bullshit yourself. All of that money is going to be given to wealthy developers. They're going to use, like, small little tiny pieces of it in order to do, like, minor repairs on infrastructure so that they can say they did it, put a little blue participation badge on it, and then they're going to take the vast majority of that money and throw it in their offshore accounts. It's 100% what's going to happen. And, like, I don't know why anyone is waving a flag being like, we did it! We did it! We gave another $500 billion to rich people! Like, you sound dumb. Like, the people that are doing that sound very, very dumb. And, like, then they turn around and they shit on the Republicans for, like, something. And I'm like, what the fuck? This was a shit show. This is a total fucking embarrassment for you guys. Joe Biden literally went in there being like, I'm the new FDR. Like, that's a fucking embarrassment. Like, I don't know how you show your face places after that. Right? Like, that's the same bullshit as, like, worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. We're gonna go after China. Right? Like, it's the same shit. Right? It's just that Biden is so sleepy and old, and he just kind of makes it look all boring. Right? He's not like an extravagant, explosive figure. He just does the same shit, but he does it so slow motionally and sleepily that people don't think it's, like, egregious. Like, for God's sakes, like, Joe Biden bombed Somalia. He's been bombing Somalia. He bombed Syria again. Right? Like, when you actually look at Donald Trump's tenure in the presidency, like, he did less of that shit than Biden has. Is that true, what I just said? Because he did do a big bombing campaign in Afghanistan. Such a fucking mess. Fuck it. I think the GOP have it in the bag for 2022, 24. Yeah, whether or not elections will exist by 2028. Well, I mean, the elections will exist until they're no longer useful to maintain. Right? Like, as long as people will continue to funnel themselves into this worthless pursuit, they will. Yeah, Democrats had 40 years to fix their image. They didn't. Now there's no point in fighting for them at all. Yeah. Politico's pretty hard right. I haven't seen any pro-Dem articles there lately. I mean, the Democratic Party is pretty hard to write too. I don't know about surrounding the halls of power. Need a 6-week general strike. Yeah, that's part of it for sure. Like, just stop participating, right? Stop participating. No, the thing that would threaten the power structure more than anything would be an organized political movement that is outside of the electoral model that they currently have, right? Just a new model. Occupy was starting to get there, but unfortunately what happened with the Occupy movement is that because they refused... The thing that happened to Occupy is exactly what happens to all anarchist movements. They don't have a centralized, formal system, and so it just got taken over, right? That they lost control of it. But if a similar thing were to happen, with like an actual centralized electoral leadership and a power structure within the movement itself that was separate and different than the system than the United States system, that would be a massive threat to them. Be a massive threat to them. But yeah, a 6-week general strike would really fuck them up for sure. Oh yeah. Brandon Rebellion, reject the parties. What I love about this Let's Go Brandon thing is that Brandon himself is just like a good old boy. He's just like, oh, okay, I didn't know, I didn't really know, I didn't think my name would be associated with saying fuck you to Joe Biden. You know? He's just part of it. As Trump was giving his acceptance speech on election night, I was laughing my ass off about Hillary never being president. Yeah. Like, Hillary ran a really arrogant campaign. That's her. That's what did her in. Like, she lost a lot of those races in very, very thin margins, right? And it was because she didn't really take Trump seriously ever. All the way to the end, she never took Trump seriously. That's hubris that got her. Canada needs an infrastructure bill. Canada needs lots of things. Canada needs to do lots of things. Trump dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan, yet Trump also gave the CIA and the DOD ability to hide and cover bombings of innocents. So yeah, Trump and Biden are equal on the foreign policy front. Yeah. No, you're right. I recant. I was ruffling every time I see her face on The View talking about Russia and China and domestic threats. Well, and then like post this election, the Democrats have done absolutely no reflection whatsoever. Like 0% reflection. Like, I actually do think they would have gained an awful lot of credibility if after the Hillary Clinton loss, they had it backed up and simply asked the question, what did we do? What is it that we did to lose this election? And I don't think it would have mattered if they had to come up with like serious things. Like, I don't think the things they need to come up with were very serious, right? I just think that if any attempt to actually address that question and to ask that question and to actually go out into and have a national discourse based on this idea of seriously contemplating, why did Hillary Clinton lose this election? Let's actually ask this question. Let's actually talk to people about the nature of this question. And of course there would be people who would say stupid shit. And of course there would be people who would be trying to cover. And of course there would be bad faith actors. And of course all that. But at least they would be attempting to address that issue. Instead of that, it was a Russian conspiracy theory. Right? Like, we got Russiagate. And like, if I'm like an independent voter, if I'm one of these guys that flips back and forth between Republican and Democrat, that's a big yikes for me. That's a big yikes for me. Like, oh, you guys just lost, and instead of addressing internal issues that might be of interest to why that occurred, you're just going to point a finger and create a conspiracy theory surrounding fucking Russia. Oh, yikes. Boy, am I ever glad you guys didn't win. If that's the way you operate, boy, am I ever glad you didn't win. It was one of those rare moments when something happened that wasn't supposed to. Of course, Trump just turned into Bush, but it was still fun. Yeah, you know, and I think that counts. That plays, man. That plays. Like, it's, and there is something, like, there's so much just, like, bleak bullshit going on. And, like, people need to vent. People need to, like, Trump was, like, the ultimate, and still is, like, the ultimate expression of just, like, we're so tired of this bullshit. Like, we need something to crack. We need a crack. Like, and Trump ends up being like a George Carlin-esque sort of weird, like, figure. And not George Carlin, the soup can guy. You guys know what I'm talking about? The Campbell soup guy? What the hell is this guy's name? Just a person who, like, is an art piece in and of himself. You know he's not supposed to be there. Like, you know Donald Trump was not supposed to be there. And even his supporters are aware that he's not really supposed to be there. But that was part of what made it fun, right? Yeah, Trump is the expression of F the world. Well, certainly F the system, right? Certainly F the system. And there is a good chance that Donald Trump is going to win the next election, man. Like, he's still the front runner in the Republican Party. He's still the front runner. People still have to pay attention to him. He doesn't seem to have any credible opposition. There doesn't seem to be anybody else in the party that can mount a credible opposition to him. Maybe DeSantis, right? But, like, would a DeSantis presidency be better? And but so, like, Trump's trajectory to being reelected, it's there. Like, it's right there. And he lost to Biden in very, like, and look how hard the Democrats had to push the populace. Look how hard the Democrats had to push the populace in order to get this win against Trump. And it was all based on this moral premise that we are better than Trump. We are better. Like, we are morally superior. We are going to do things to help the populace. We are going to help people. Your lives will improve with a Biden presidency. Right? Like, this is how they were acting. They were literally treating Biden like he was the next FDR. And what have they done? Well, they've disillusioned people, haven't they? Right? They did what Obama did. Made big promises that they just never intended on delivering on, seriously. And they've disillusioned a bunch of people. And at the end of the day, Republican voters are going to show up because they're highly motivated to do so. And Biden voters won't because they'll be disillusioned. And that's going to be the story of it. Oh, yeah, the Democrats were ready to invade Russia for sure. No, they were right on that, right? I still think no COVID equals Trump reelected. You're probably right, dude. That, like, COVID really was his undoing in many ways. That he really bumbled on that one, for sure. That's undeniable. Yeah, if Trump gets back in, it'll be too late for climate change. I mean, there's always that too, which is, again, why full-scale revolution is what we need to be focused on. Because the Democrats aren't doing anything about climate change either, right? Like, let's not bullshit this, right? The Democrats care about climate change exactly the same amount as Trump does, as the Republicans do, which is not at all, right? They're willing to stand up and be like, yeah, climate change. So, like, so revolution is the only answer. You've got to surround the halls of power. You have to. There's no other solution. There isn't another solution. Like, I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't believe it was the only thing to do, right? if anybody could come forward and say, no, this is the thing that we should be doing, and it was actually credible and it was shown that it was actually effective, I would go along with it. But it doesn't exist. The only thing that has historical precedence and that is effective during these periods of time is revolution. It's the only thing that works. And that's what it's about. It's about what works. Well, surrounding the halls of power, redrawing a new constitution, denying the validity of the current prevailing ruling class. That's the way to get shit done. And I'm not saying it's going to just like be rainbows and happy flags and all this kind of shit. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be like A Bug's Life, where all the ants stand up and go like, "Get out of here, crickets," and all the crickets go, "Oh," and then they leave. Right? It's probably going to not be as clean as that, but it's the only thing that we can do. There's nothing else to do. Actors in the White House seem to be a thing. I think both parties have run out of viable people for the president. He's doing it to get out of trouble and cancel all indictments and court cases against him. Honestly, I think Trump is doing it just because his ambition is to be the president. That's it. Like, he just wants to be the big shot. He just wants to be the big shot. Right? I'm the president of the United States. That's it. It's what all American politics have turned into. Like, all American politics are vanity projects. If you are running for office, you're not running for office in order to help Americans and do any of that kind of stuff. You're doing it because you want to be a congressperson. You're doing it because you want to be a senator. You're doing it because you want to be the president of the United States. And it's strictly a vanity project. There's no such thing as a politician in America who's doing it for the good of the people or any of that shit. That does not exist in American politics. And even if you are that, even if you are a person who's running in American politics in order to try and better and all that kind of stuff, that'll go away real fast. That'll go away real fast. Take a look at someone like Sinema. Sinema is exactly the person. Like, she was like an activist, right? An anarchist activist at that. She was like part of the Occupy movement, all of this, right? Gets into power. Just immediately sees that, like, oh, it literally doesn't matter if I am like a long-term congressperson here forever. Like, it doesn't matter if I get voted out immediately, right? I achieved the vanity project of becoming a congresswoman, and I've made all these connections. I've made a shit ton of money. I'll bounce. Doesn't matter, right? Like, that's what it is. Yeah, I truly believe Freeland is running the show. Yeah, Trudeau is just a puppet. Yeah, absolutely. Early signs of liberal leadership ambitions as Chrystia Freeland biography and works. I'm really looking forward to the chapter on her collaboration with Ukrainian Nazis. Just living up the family tradition, right? Got to collaborate with Nazis. And so this is absolutely them, right? Trying to pump up Chrystia Freeland in front of us. Even though she's fucking like a nightmare creature. Duplicitous. Huge liar. And hey, Nazi collaborator, right? Like, it's very telling that nobody's willing to stand up in the mainstream and be like, hey, Chrystia, what's with the Nazi collaboration? Like, and, they're going to sit down and they're going to write this book about Chrystia Freeland. They're not going to bring it up. It's not going to be part of the book. All right? They're not going to talk about it. Even though she 100% did that, and her grandfather was a fucking Nazi collaborator. Like, hey, maybe we should bring that up. We should talk about that. Bit weird that we're not, eh? Bit weird. No, he wants to be the ruler of all democracy will be gone. I mean, that's just his big ass fucking ego, right? Like, I don't actually believe that Donald Trump has the capability to destroy American democracy. Like, I don't think he actually does have that capacity, right? They keep like throwing that out there to try and create like the Hitler connection, right? But like, Trump isn't Hitler, like he isn't. Hitler was very, very motivated on big social ideas and big social issues, right? He wrote a book in his youth called Mein Kampf, where he's like walking around with like a philosophical tract, which I consider to be one of the great philosophical tracts of capitalism, that like contained in it lots of ideas and lots of projects and lots of thinking, right? And some of that thinking was, let's round up the Jews and execute them, right? But that shows you that he has an ambition that goes beyond simply holding the office. Like, that's all Trump wants. He doesn't have an ambition outside of that. He's never written anything. He's never said anything. He's never had an interview. He's never written a manifesto of any sort, right? His goal is not to be a great changer of civilization or to be like a social anything or so on and so forth. It's literally to be the president, right? Like, he's not sitting there being like, I'm going to eliminate democracy and be the king of America, right? Like, he knows that when his second term is up, he'll pass the baton over to his son. He knows, right? Why else do you think his son is working so hard to get ready, right? So that when he passes the baton, his son will pick it up. Because that to Trump would be a continuation of his own prestige, right? That my son becomes the president, right? We have a familial dynasty. But yeah, being president shields Trump from legal scrutiny. It's true. The American left made its most gains when Trump was in power. Why not re-elect him in 2024? Trump gave me 1,800, Biden gave me 1,400, yeah. Just like the alt-right grew under Obama and is currently growing under Biden, the alt-right took a huge hit under Trump using Charlottesville, yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, it's a bit odd, man. Like, it's a bit odd that there's, like, actually a movement of any prominence that supports the Democrats or Biden at all. It just comes down to fear. It just comes down to fear, right? People don't really know what to do, right? And if you were to listen to someone like me, and even if you take my position seriously, like, what I am talking about is very scary, right? Get to the streets, surround the halls of power, redraw a new constitution. Good to see you, onward. Like, it's all very scary. There's a lot of uncertainty in it. But I'd rather, and I mean, Donald Trump proves this thesis. I think people are ready for uncertainty. I think people would rather go into uncertain territory than certainly march towards their own demise. I thought you said it comes down to beer. Beer. The problem and solution to all man's troubles. I got done with my first cleaning an hour early. Thanks, John, for the mental massage. Well, you're welcome, grinning guys. I expect a check in the mail. What's interesting is Michael Flynn's brother's now in charge of Army Pacific Command. If they can, next time it will be a proper Army coup. I don't know about that, dude. Like, this is what's really interesting about the American military, right? Is that I do think they've drunk their own Kool-Aid. Like, I think that they really do believe that they are about, like, patriotism and the truth and righteousness and Americanism and all those things. And, like, democracy. Like, I really do think that the American military, for all of its massive, massive, massive failings, especially in regards to, like, invading people and all this, I do think that if figures in American public life started to say, we're going to do away with this democratic process, I really do think that the American military itself would be like, no. Like, it's interesting that way. That, like, when it comes to invading, like, foreign nations and destroying brown people and, like, stealing resources and all this, they're like, yeah, hunky-dory, that sounds great. But when it comes to, like, ruling their own people, they seem to actually do think that, like, no, people need to elect their leadership. We need a civilian leadership that is elected by the people. It's one of the contradictions of America. It's this odd incoherence that seems to exist in America. That, like, the system itself has obviously been overwhelmed by corporate power and money, right? And to the degree that elections are almost, well, not almost, elections are fucking meaningless. Like, but the United States military is probably the force that's the most insistent that they occur. It's very interesting. So Freeland is 100% becoming PM by 2023 now. We don't know what the timeline is, but it comes down to what the next election, what happens with the next election. Trudeau has said that he's going to run in the next election. He has no intention of stepping down, which, yeah, makes sense. Like, they actually gained seats in the last election, so, like, there's not really a good, like, they didn't get their majority, certainly, but, like, ousting Trudeau right now, is it necessary? Do you have to do it? But, like, they're for sure priming Freeland. Like, they know that Freeland's the next one. Trudeau has to know it, too. Like, she's the deputy prime minister, for God's sakes. And so, should an election happen and they lose seats, they'll oust Trudeau and put in Freeland. That's what'll happen. And if the populace is smart, the next chance they've got, they'll make the Liberals lose power. Because fuck these Liberals. Fuck these Karens and these Kens. Like, fuck these guys. They're just nightmares. Like, just this, we'll just negotiate with the sun. That's fine. Yeah, okay, bud. Yeah, Freeland 2023 is going to be so bad for us. I mean, like, why? Putting a Nazi collaborator in power would be bad for us? I don't understand, Vince. Shouldn't we be collaborating with Nazis? Well, if Freeland is next, I don't think the Liberals will win. Maybe the NDP should start giving a crap and acting like adults. Yeah, good luck on that front. Freeland, Liberals need their Thatcher. Yeah, okay, right-winger. Like, that's just it, right? Like, all these guys have as points of reference are figures who have no credibility, right? Like, their reference points are all these neoliberal shills and these neoliberal hacks. And so they're like, yeah, we need another Reagan to fucking destroy the economy and ensure that we go into a mass decline, right? This doubling down on the religious ideology of neoliberalism, which, incidentally, Chrystia Freeland is absolutely doing, right? Her agenda is an agenda of austerity. That's what she wants to do, right? She's pretty explicit about it. Like, she's pretty open about it. And, like, she's not going to raise taxes on the wealthy. She's not going to attempt to do anything to resolve housing prices or anything like that. She doesn't care. She's not interested in that. She's a Nazi collaborator. And, like, she's going to do what Nazi collaborators do. She's going to cede power and authority to the powerful. That's what Nazi collaborators do. It's not a mystery. There's no big shock on this. The only thing that is shocking at all is that our media system absolutely refuses to report on her Nazi collaboration. Like, I don't think you need to know anything else about her. Like, she armed and trained Nazi groups in Ukraine. Like, if that doesn't exclude you from power here in Canada, I don't know what will. Like, no, you don't get to arm and train Nazi groups in Ukraine. You simply don't. Yeah, the trifecta of the 80s, Reagan, Thatcher, Mulroney. Yikes, we need more of that. Yeah, exactly. But this is what the empire is going to do, right? It's going to double down on its failed policies and it's going to collapse, right? Like, the idea that suddenly the people who are responsible for ushering in this failed ideology are suddenly going to have a come to Jesus moment and realize that what they've done is a failure and that they're going to suddenly start acting in a way that's actually rational and reasonable based on, like, evidence and facts and empathy and compassion. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like, the reason why they are supporting the religious ideology of neoliberal capitalism is because it's making them rich. right? It's very straightforward. Like, it's basic barbarism, right? Like, just steal. Steal. Extract as much wealth from the populace as you can. Right? It's base thievery. Through and through. And they've just created this religious ideology in order to justify or attempt to argue in favor of the thievery. Right? And that's all it is. And to hope that the populace doesn't realize, wait a minute, this isn't an economic system. This is just a justification for wealth extraction. That's what it is. It's a religious ideology attempting to justify wealth extraction. It's not a fucking economic system. You said Empire, play Princess Leia's theme. Ba, 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 ba. I don't know if that's Leia's theme, but it will happen when we are peeling skin off their bodies. Yuck. Alan, yeah, it's true though. Like, it's like we need to chase these guys out of politics. Like, and I mean, you guys know my view on this. I've said it several times already, but like, surround the halls of power. Like, their entire system is illegitimate. It is allowing a Nazi collaborator to become the leader of the ruling party of Canada. Like, that's a failure. Like, I don't know what else you need to say about it. Of course, oil well drilling set to rise more than 25% in 2022. So much for net zero by 2050, right? That's just a bunch of bullshit. If you believe that shit, then you're just the most gullible Karen in the world. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, they will not budge until they are threatened directly. Yeah, certainly that their power is threatened directly. Yeah, what happened to the liberals' concern about hunger and food insecurity? You know things are bad for you if you're a liberal and Maclean's is publishing articles like this, right? Like, Maclean's is like the most like pro-liberal rag that exists in Canada. And like, straight out saying like, academics, researchers, community advocates worried by swelling rates of food insecurity and the rising cost of living were watching closely, hoping the government would promise substantive moves to help the 1 in 7 Canadians now struggling to access sufficient amounts of nutritious food. Their hopes had risen after last year's throne speech, which signaled support to addressing surging rates of food insecurity, strengthening local food supply chains, supporting farmers and building resilience against climate change, and protecting Canadians and migrant workers who play an indispensable role in the food system. But as the list of the year's commitments and aspirations unfurled, disappointment set in. There was no direct mention of food insecurity, the labor shortage in the agriculture and agri-food industry, the impacts of climate change on Canada's food supply, or financial assistance for millions of employed Canadians who fall below the poverty lines, because the Liberals don't give a fuck. They never cared. Like, they didn't give a shit. They weren't, like, jumping to pass a bunch of legislation to help people before the pandemic. And the only reason they passed any supports during the pandemic was because they were scared for themselves. Like, it can't be more obvious. Like, it can't be more obvious than this. Like, I don't know what you need to see. And now that the pandemic is, like, winding down, even though it's still fucking happening, but now that now it's winding down, they're trying to get rid of all these supports. Right? So, like, so much for the crises that occurred before the pandemic. They're not even acknowledging that they're crises. And the crises that they are acknowledging, they're only acknowledging, like, in order to get your vote. Right? That we're just, like, exiting a period of time now where simply standing up and saying climate change is real was enough to get a vote. Well, that's over. That's over. I'm done with that. I hope you're done with that too. Right? And when a politician says to me, we have to acknowledge that climate change is real, all they're saying is, please vote for me. And I'm saying, no, not good enough. Simply acknowledging the existence of climate change is not even close to enough to get my vote anymore. That, to me, acknowledging the existence of climate change gets you in the room. Period. Gets you in the room. Like, I'm to the point now where, like, I think if you're supporting the Conservatives at all, while they're still having like an internal debate as to whether or not climate change is real, if you're still supporting conservatives, I think you're nuts. Like, I think you're Looney Tunes, crazy go nuts, drinking battery acid like ridiculous. And no, of course we're not at the end of the pandemic. And like, it's like the pandemic's going to mutate. We're going to get a new thing, right? And that's caused completely because we didn't actually do what we needed to do to quell it. And so it's going to like get into like India or Africa or any of these poorer nations, and it's going to mutate and it's going to become scarier. It's going to sidestep our vaccines. It's going to be fucking terrifying. It's going to turn into a real monster because like we don't give a fuck. And like eventually there is going to like seize an attitude in the populace where we're just going to be like, fuck it. That's going to happen. Right? And that's exactly what happened with the Spanish influenza. Like when the Spanish influenza came through, they tracked it, right? Just like we tracked this, they tracked it. And they were like, up it went, and then it went down, and then up it went, and then it went down, and then it started to go up again, and then they just literally stopped tracking it. They just straight up were just like, fuck it. That's it. That'll happen here. They left the disabled alone on subsistence rates from a decade ago while saying you need 2K to others. Exactly, Frog. Exactly. That is the observation, right? These liberals do not give a fuck. They outright stood up and said, you need $2,000 to survive here in Canada, so here it is, in an act of desperation to keep control of the populace and also simultaneously save their own skins, which is really what it was about, while basically flipping off the disabled, who get less than $2,000 and have been getting less than $2,000 for years. Like, get fucked. Like, get fucked on this. Like, that's a really good point. And, like, the liberals know this, and they could have done something about it plenty of times. They've had plenty of opportunities. And who would stand in their way? Who's going to vote down that legislation? Like, that's how you know it's disgraceful, right? Because the liberals could literally, like, make a heyday out of it. They could go crazy with that shit. We're gonna raise the rates for the disabled. And, like, who's gonna stand up and be like, boo to that? Like, the best you're gonna get is some, like, conservative type, some Conrad Black-style psychopath being like, oh, can we afford it? How are you gonna pay for that? Like, that's what it's gonna be. But, like, and they could, like, literally turn it into, like, the moral concern and be like, we are the better people, and we have a moral conscience, and we are gonna show the Canadian people that we are gonna take care of our most vulnerable, and on and on and on it go, and the populace would eat it up. They would eat it up, and they're not doing it. And why? Because they don't care. They never did. They don't give a shit. Their gambit is still, look at the pretty floofy hair man. That's it. Hey, floofy hair boy, isn't he pretty? She session. Like, the Karens are fucking eating it up. They're fucking eating it up. These fucking worthless Karens marching us to our destruction. Or we'll get Ebola on top of COVID. Yeah, dude. You think when it mutates that it'll give me better 5G reception? Well, given that they're putting the 5G bots inside of the vaccines, right? Maybe we'll all become like Wi-Fi towers. You gotta look at the silver linings on all this shit. How they treat people with the least power is how they will treat the rest of us if they can get away with it. Exactly, Frog. Exactly, bud. That's well said. That's well stated. Hey, Alex, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Yeah, the poverty line in Canada is considered $13,213 a year, which, like, get fucked on that count, right? Like, my average rent is $1,200. Like, do the fucking math, right? Like, average rent is $1,200. Like, it doesn't take a fucking genius to figure this out. I'm so glad you guys are here, man. Like, share, subscribe, give me money. Do all that kind of thing. right? Send $1 my way. If you are giving me $1, think about making it $2. If you give me $5, I'll give you all my music from here until forever. If you give me 10, I'll send you my other projects. I have some poetry I just read that I'm going to put on digital. I'll send that out. I wrote a script, a movie script, which I'm actually quite proud of. That is inspiring me to write another script. Who has a floofy hair? Trudeau. Mr. Floofy Hair Trudeau, right? That's essentially his whole personality, right? Is his fucking floofy hair. Yeah, I'm so glad that you guys are here, man. I'm constantly floored at this. I'm constantly floored about this. Almost daily, I have this moment where I'm just like, shit, there's people here, man. Like, there's people here. What the fuck? And sure, the numbers dip, and then like it's like this, right? It goes like this. That's fine. That's fine. But it seems like the trajectory is upwards. That it's like going like this, but it's going up. It's going up. It's going up, right? And it's like, I'm always, yeah, Trudeau's quite the dreamboat. Absolutely, yeah. You do like it when your arms dealers look good. And no, I'm just so happy. Like, you guys are the thing that makes this worth doing. Absolutely. Hey, Lonnie, how you doing? I know that there's a bunch of lurkers out there. I know that's true. And the way I know that's true is at the end of every cast, I can see how many unique views the video got, like, right away. And there's always like 45 to 50 views right away. So I know there's 45 to 50 people coming in here and seeing what I have to say. I know what the average watch time is, and I know what the how many people were here at any one time, like what the peak was. I know how many people were here at any one time, and there is absolutely no way that there's like 45 people talking in this chat over the course of the 3 hours. So I know that there are people who are just silently lurking in the background, and thank you for being here, every single one of you. You silent lurkers who don't want to draw attention to yourselves. I respect why you don't necessarily want to draw attention to yourselves. But thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. And yeah, once again, think about donating $1, right? Donating $1. And you know what? Here's another thing that I'm actually starting to talk about. I am just about to crest into 800 people. Right, 800 subscribers. The magic number is 1,000, and so I want to get through these next 200 subscribers as quickly as I possibly can. So really do consider telling a friend or a family member about me, right? And getting that friend or that family member to subscribe, not necessarily because I want, like, they should watch or any of that kind of stuff, but just to pump my numbers. Honestly, I'm going to be as selfish as I possibly can about it when I talk about it. Like, the I know, it's already 9. We're getting there, Zorikin. Yeah, I know, time flies when you're having fun, right? But at this stage in the game, getting from 800 subscribers to 1,000 subscribers is the major milestone. Like, that's 1,000 subscribers is the major milestone. And if I could get each and every one of you to just get a friend to subscribe, we could ramp that up and we could get there a lot faster. And because once we hit 1,000, that's when this channel starts to monetize. And that's a huge deal for me. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Well, and thanks, Grinning. I value the trolls. I gotta tell you, I don't mind them at all. Especially now that I've got the slow mode on. We had a troll in here just the other day, or just at the midpoint, I think. Yeah, Alex, you should record some of your songs, dude. You're a very good writer. You've got some really good, like, you've got some shit to say. It's really obvious that you've got like some you got to get like Opeth to do your shit, dude. Like your shit's real. Got a passion. Do you got a request, Harry? You want to hear something? You got a request? Anything specific? I don't know which way I want to go with it. Which way do I want to go with it? Do I want to go nice or do I want to go heavy metal? You know what? That's the one I want to do. It's kind of in between. It's not heavy metal, but it's not nice. Freebird. Shut up, Alex. No, I don't mean it. I don't mean it. So this is like classic country, but I love this song anyway. And I don't have the chords written on this side of the sheet, so when it starts to fuck up on that side, forgive me. And I don't have it memorized, so here we go. This place is bubbling over, your money you can keep. I'd rather while away my days dying in the streets than spend another moment sucking up to you. You can take this job, put it up your ass, and this is what you'll do. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. Just go and get a job that doesn't pay the rent. Go get an education and drown in all your debt. The billionaires don't give a damn how hard they're screwing you. So let's all send a message and tell them what to do. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. We're all in this together so long as you do all the work. Slave away your better days working for some jerk. This deal ain't no kind of life, it makes me wanna scream. Let's round these motherfuckers up and get the guillotines. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. This could have a spoken word part? Yeah, for sure it could. For sure it could. I should talk to my dad about that. My dad and his wife are experts at spoken word shit in the middle of country songs. If you don't know, my dad is a country gospel singer. The Sandersons, if you want to look them up. Very, very like right-wing, rural Republican Christian gospel music. But they're excellent. And they do that shit all the time. They'll like be playing some country tune and then suddenly they'll like come in with a Bible verse and like, Jesus says, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Oh yeah, that's a great song, dude. I love going through my stuff. I'm so looking forward to getting like the live music again, getting into the open mic scene and really finding out the veracity of some of these songs, right? Like, it's one thing to play them for you guys in, like, this digital sort of format, and I feel fairly confident on some of them, but, like, the energy exchange is what does it, right? Like, I'm absolutely positive that I have a couple of songs that I'm going to play, and I think that they're good, and then I'm going to play them for people in like live areas, and they're just going to be like, nah. I'm going to be like, fuck. I know it's going to happen. But it could also go the other way, right? I could have some songs that I'm like, about, and then like people will be like, oh shit, that's the shit. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And that's what I love. I've always loved that about a live performance, right? You can't get that from film. You can't get that from television. You can't get that from any of that. Like the energy exchange, the live experience. It's, I miss it. I miss it. I'm hoping it's going to happen soon. We'll see. I want to read poetry at an open mic. Yeah, I got some poetry too that I would love to read at an open mic. All right, guys. We have found ourselves at the end of the recording. Oh, I got to admit, I'm a little sad to say farewell this time too. I really enjoyed tonight. This is a good one. This is a good one. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being living in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hope that you will not realize it. Don't let them. Good luck. We're going to need it.